Ladies and gentlemen, Red Lobster is preparing to file for bankruptcy. It's big news. It's a little silly, but it's actually significant because Democrats are really worried what this means for the economy. Joe Biden recently gave an interview where he said that people got money to spend, despite inflation being way up. New consumer price index reports came out and inflation is up. So there is this massive disparity between what the media is telling people and what people are feeling. And I think this is breaking people from the corporate press because people can tell that prices are up. People can't go out to eat anymore. And now, silly as it may be, Red Lobster is shutting down 50 locations and preparing to file for bankruptcy. And this is a bigger indicator of what's going on in the U.S. economy. So we're going to talk about that, what that means for the election. And then we've got a bunch of other crazy news. So have you heard about that portal from Dublin to New York? Apparently there was a big live stream and degenerates came and made sure that it was not a thing. And so they had to shut it down. Some OnlyFans adult entertainer, I'll be polite, bared all in front of the live stream camera. So they shut that one down, but everyone's laughing about that. And then this is pretty big news, actually, but I don't know how much people really care about the foreign policy stuff. We were thinking of leading with it, but in Russia, the Russian forces are advancing into Kharkiv unabated. No obstruction, which is strange because the U.S. just sent them billions of dollars. And the money that was supposed to go to the fortifications went to fake companies that were set up, and tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of U.S. dollars were stolen. Yep. This is regular crooks and thieves who pretended to be contractors in the country, took the money, and that's it. No one actually wanted to fight, and that's where your dollars are going. This story is big, and I think it matters, but it's hard to condense the nuance into a functional headline so that people understand how this economy being crap is, a large factor in it is them sending your money to Ukrainian corrupt individuals, stealing it for personal gain, and Russia's winning anyway. So that's why foreign policy matters. We're going to talk about that and a whole bunch more, but head over to castbrew.com to buy coffee. Everybody's favorite, of course, is Appalachian Nights. We also have Rise with Roberto Jr. When you buy Cast Brew Coffee, you're supporting the show. It's our coffee company. We sponsor ourselves. We are, I believe we are just about to complete the permitting process, which we've been trapped in for a long time, in Martinsburg, West Virginia, where our location is currently being built. And the issue with it is it's a building from like 1902 or something. So, this has really jammed us up, but it is what it is. Head over to timcast.com, click join us, become a member. That way you can hang out for the uncensored member call-in show. You want to call in? You want to talk to us and our guests? You got to be a member. You got to sign up and be a member for at least 6 months. Or you can sign up today at the $25 per month level, which bypasses the initial screener. We needed some kind of screening process because we had weirdos trying to come in and troll and harass. So at first we were like, let's just do a time gig. You got to be a member for a certain amount of time. And it's like, well, that's not fair. They're new members. We want people to sign up. It's like, okay, well, what if you spend a little extra? That little extra really does go a long way in supporting the show, but also keeping out a lot of the people who are just trying to harass and troll. So we recommend you guys become a member to support the show because then you can call in and talk to us, and we're really looking forward to hearing from you. Smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with all your friends if you like it. Joining us tonight to talk about this and so much more is Michael Seifert.
Good to see you. Glad to be here.
Who are
I'm
you?
Michael Seifert, founder of a company called Public Square. And we are the largest marketplace in the nation of businesses that love our country, our Constitution, and the wonderful values that document protects. We're changing the country through the power of commerce.
I just showed Michael earlier that Flip Skateboards is on Public Square. And I want people to understand this. This is one of the most prominent skateboard companies in the world. And they are on Public Square basically saying that they agree with our values. American values, family values, free speech, all of these really great things. You may not care about skateboarding, but this is just a major cultural victory. It means pro sports and these massive companies. I mean, skateboarding is in the Olympics. So this is tremendous. You guys are doing great stuff. Glad to have you here.
Thanks, man. It's good to be here.
Phil's hanging out.
Hello, everybody. My name is Phil Labonte. I am the lead singer of the heavy metal band All That Remains. I'm an anti-communist and a counter-revolutionary. How you doing, Hannah Claire?
I'm good. I'm Hannah Claire Brimlow. I'm a writer for scnr.com. That's Scanner News. Follow all of our work at Timcast News on the social medias. Hi, Serge.
Hey, guys. I'm here, too. Let's get started.
Here's the news, ladies and gentlemen. It's bad news. Red Lobster. We hardly knew ye. Preparing to file for bankruptcy protection this month, casual dining chain aiming to restructure agreements with landlords and creditors to trim debt. Now, the crazy thing is, Daily Mail reports, workers fury as thousands lose their jobs after Red Lobster immediately shutters more than 50 outlets across America without warning. Red Lobster staff are furious the chain let them go with no warning. More than 50 outlets are being shuttered across the country, and the brand has already begun auctioning off kitchen equipment. But it's okay. Joe Biden said that people have money to spend and everything's fine.
Well, you know, the best angle of this whole thing for me is the fact that one of their biggest issues is they lost apparently $11 million on their endless shrimp campaign. Like they just flew too close to the sun and then they lost it all. And I feel like that is just a story for any entrepreneur out there. You know, I can't eat at Red Lobster. I'm allergic to shellfish, but I feel like it's not going to be the same when you're not driving down the street and occasionally passing a Red Lobster. There are still like 700 locations across the country. Maybe this is something TikTok can turn around. Like, where are the Gen Zers in their campaign to save Red Lobster?
They're broke.
Yeah. Yep. The significant part of this is, I mean, just like you said, there's a bunch of other stores that are going to stay open. So it's not like Red Lobster's going out of business. But closing 50 stores and losing that many jobs is significant. And it just goes to show, you know, there are significant struggles with the economy still. People are not feeling like they're in a good place economically. They don't feel like they're financially secure. So
and they're auctioning off kitchen equipment. Like it's a fire sale. Mm-hmm. And that's, I mean, your business is not in a healthy position if you're having to file for bankruptcy protection. So if there is going to be a TikTok campaign to save them, it's got to happen in the next month. And the hard part too is like Red Lobster is a staple of sort of the middle class. Red Lobster is like a great date night spot for lots of Americans to go out. And the fact that establishment took the hit is, I think, indicative of a much bigger problem in the economy. Like, people do not have disposable income to be able to actually spend on anything outside the bare necessities.
Now, I thought it was funny to lead with Red Lobster shuttering. That's the big news, right? But people need to understand that the only reason we mention the name Red Lobster is that it's a massive corporate chain. So when they shut down 50 stores across the country, that registers with the national press. You know what does not register? When mom and pop diners shut down, when local family restaurants shut down. So you're looking into this big corporate entity, an octopus with many tentacles, and it screams and you hear it. But what no one reports nationally is, here's a list of the 50 mom and pop diners that have shut down across the country, because it's not relevant. It's relevant when your chain that you know and you see down the street is closing. I'd be willing to bet if you look at local news, small towns, you're seeing Rick's Diner is closing after 30 years. Mm-hmm. John's Family Bakery after 80 years is shutting down.
Yeah, this is just a continuation of a trend, which is, you know, probably started with COVID, I think. You know, when the shutdowns happened and people had to stay, the lockdowns happened, people had to stay home. They had to close a lot of people had businesses that they lost because of that. And then you had the issues with the supply chains and stuff, and then you had the inflation. So there's been significant stressors for the entirety of the Biden administration, and their responses, the Biden administration's responses, have been absolutely insufficient.
Well, and it's interesting, too, because Red Lobster has been around since, like, 1962. So in the time that it was growing, it prevented small businesses from opening up. That's how this works sometimes, you know, whatever. But then when it goes away, we don't have small businesses moving in, and we also don't have this corporate chain. So the communities that it's in will inevitably suffer. It reminds me of stories, you know, I had read an interview with someone who lived in, I think it was Welch, West Virginia, which is one of the poorest areas of the country. And they talked about how they'd lived their whole lives. There used to be a bustling Main Street. Industry changed. That got closed down. A Walmart came in. Then the Walmart left. And so the communities there have nothing, right?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say there's a survey from Slack, actually. I was just thinking about this when you guys were talking. They did a survey in January, end of January, and released the results that found that 32% of the small business owners that utilize Slack said that they're afraid they're not even going to make it all of 2024. A third of small businesses.
Did you see the story that something like 40% of small businesses didn't make rent?
Yeah, last month.
Yeah.
That's horrifying.
I mean, like, it's looking really bad. I do want to briefly mention this funny meme that I saw. A guy tweeted, there is a secret society of people that are keeping Long John Silver's in business, and they're living among us. And I'm like,
I believe that. This is what I was
I don't know who
saying.
goes as a Long John Silver's.
But
Never
this is
been.
what I'm saying about like the TikTok campaign. Like one of the things that the country could do, you know, TikTok just being like any sort of young people fad, when these things become cult classics, people start going after them. Like I saw this video on Reels where girls are like, you know, don't unalive yourself. There's Applebee's. Applebee's is great. And they're like showing eating like a group of girls.
Because of Red Lobster?
No, Applebee's. I think
No,
it's
no,
Applebee's.
but I mean, like they're depressed because Red Lobster closed.
No, they're saying like life is good. Look at this molten lava cake from Applebee's. Like people have weird sense of humor. If someone could just really market Red Lobster, maybe we could turn this thing around. On the other hand, again, I've read this report that this endless shrimp thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't good, but there was a moment they were like, but people think it's so funny that they're coming in. So maybe that's working for us. Like maybe we can survive these losses. Again, I can't personally eat at Red Lobster, but you have to decide which American iconic chain you want to protect alongside all of the small businesses that depend on your dollar.
I wonder if, you know, I was just thinking that people need to find a passion. You know, they need to find satisfaction in the little things and, you know, working up to something, be it if you really enjoy hiking, then you can find a way to turn that into a business, to share your passions. Maybe it's a product, maybe it's videos. That's my world, right? Media. So maybe you're filming videos. But I wonder if actually this is a contributing factor to part of the economic downturn, is that Gen Z being hit by 2 economic crises in their lifetimes, millennials too, that they've basically just been like, I don't really care to pursue things that make money when the system is mismanaged so miserably. For millennials, I mean, I imagine someone gets out of college, they're maybe my age, and then immediately after they do, they can't find a job because the market collapse results in, it's a story I told. I was looking for a job as a dishwasher, and I'm standing in line, and the guy in front of me is like 5 years older than me wearing a suit applying for these jobs. And I'm just like, wow. Because when they lost their jobs, they had to find work. And so this ripple effect, you know, backwashes, I guess, into millennials. Now they're in their you know, mid-30s, and then COVID happens. And so their view of building things doesn't matter because it's been destroyed. It's like they built a sandcastle, wiped out. Now they're just like, I don't care. I don't need money. I'm going to live in a van down by the river. And I say it so often as a semi-joke, but van life was massively popular. I don't know if, I assume it still is. These videos all over the internet of people being like, I'm done, I'm leaving. Van life is basically the system in collapse. They're not having kids. They're not having family night. They're not having family dinner, which means you see Red Lobster shut down, Olive Garden's next.
Yep. And the thing is, these are
endless breadsticks.
I was going to say, that's a doom and gloom prediction.
Yeah, that is sad.
Now, I don't know for sure Red Lobster's like structure, but I think they're a franchise, aren't they? So is it one franchise? Either way, point being, like there's a lot of businesses that are closing. This is because of these strains that our economy is seeing. And I'm gonna say this as much as I can because it's literally the most important thing that we've got going on right now is the fact of we have too much money printing, and we have an inflationary situation, and we have bills coming due with unfunded liabilities. The economic threat, the value of the dollar is the biggest threat to the United States of America going. And as long as the government continues to kick the can down the road and not do anything about unfunded liabilities, you can complain about war all you want. You can complain about any of the social situation, any policy you want. All of them will get worse if the dollar explodes. Yep. They all get worse. More war, absolutely. Without the United States being stable, more war, absolutely, without question. You can talk about what's going on in Israel and Gaza. The whole Middle East will go up in flames without the United States actually being a stable country. I'm not talking about the U.S. being there dropping bombs or anything. Just if there is that kind of instability, other countries are going to act. Our fiscal problem is our biggest problem. The unfunded liabilities is our problem. $1 trillion in interest last year alone. $1 trillion.
People need to understand that if the petrodollar collapses, that means the CIA-run sock puppets that make this show look big will be out of work, and then people will realize no one actually watches Timcast IRL.
Yeah, actually, they'll realize that we're just AI, right?
Right.
I watch it.
Well, there'll be glitches.
But he had to say that it was part of his contract to be here.
Exactly. I did sign that part. Yeah. No,
it's all deep state.
We have, so every month we send out a survey called the Freedom Economy Index. So we have 80,000 plus small businesses on our platform. These people are salt of the earth, family owned and operated, heart of Main Street, and they fill out a survey every month, thousands of them, that share their thoughts on how the economy is going. And I think the resounding feedback we get every single month is that they feel gaslit. They feel like the Biden administration and the powers that be and Janet Yellen and all of the ivory tower folks that run our economy have told them, you are fine. You are fine. Prices aren't rising. You're imagining that. You're not having a hard time hiring. You're imagining that. Unemployment's not high. People aren't getting second jobs. Like, they just tell you all these things until they hope that they will beat you into submission into actually believing it. But our business owners even have said over the last month that their costs, over 80% of them said that their costs, in terms of like supplier costs, have gone up again over the last month. And that's the eighth month in a row that they've gone up again. What's fascinating, though, is that over half of those business owners that respond, we're talking thousands of business owners, have said that they're actually not passing on those costs to their consumer. Well, that has a breaking point at some point. Like, they can't keep doing that forever, especially if 42% of businesses aren't making their rent and over a third of them. It's insane. So everybody feels like we're kind of in this, we all feel it. You're kind of standing on thin ice and it feels like it's about to break and you don't know what the first domino to fall will be. Yeah, here you go. 43% of small businesses were unable to pay their rent in April due to economic headwinds.
So this is unusual Wales.
Great account.
Citing Bloomberg's report, the highest rent delinquency since March 2021. I think we are looking at the potential for some serious economic downturn. And I just hate to be such a naysayer about it. But guys, let me jump to the story and just throw it in the mix as we start the segment off. Biden is blasted as clueless and out of touch for claiming Americans, quote, have money to spend when told grocery prices are up 30% in rare sit-down. Now wait there a minute. Let's all just remain calm. A lot of people tell me, like, I can't take listening to this. It's bad news all the time. You're right. You're right. It is. I wish we could pull up some silly bunnies and puppies, you know, chasing butterflies or something. And I think it's fair if you choose to ignore all this stuff. I met a guy when I was hanging out in DC a couple months ago. He said, I used to watch every episode, but I just decided that it was too negative and I should cut it out of my life. And I'm like, I get it. I absolutely do. I am mad about it. My fear is just the end result of doing that is exactly what causes it.
Yep.
What I see with the economic downturn, with Biden going on TV out of his mind saying people have money to spend, is the result of the Titanic has hit the iceberg and someone just said, I'd rather not think about it. And it's like, okay, then when this ship cracks in half, you go down with it. And the rest of us will be, I admit, ignorance is bliss. And for the time being, facing what we're facing and the election in November, we may all be a little bit more tightly wound, but tightly wound with full bellies because we are thinking about this. We're planning. We're trying to fix it. But the most important thing is what really frustrates me when I met this guy and he was like, I used to watch every single episode, but it's just too negative. I'm like, you've given up. And there's bad news all the time. And the people who understand what's going on but keep cool about it are the ones that are working towards reversing it. When you say, I don't want to hear it anymore, you're basically saying, I understand our house is on fire. I'm going to go across the street and read my phone and check Twitter while you deal with the fire. And I'm like, we all need to focus on what's going on. And at the very least, think about what we can do to, if not solve it, mitigate or prepare for ourselves, our friends, and our families.
Well, and that's gosh, you want positive news. Like, the biggest takeaway for me out of the past 6 months is that if you actually call people to action and you give them an actual solution, they'll jump at it. Like, the country's not without hope. People just want to know what I do with my frustration. So we tell this to people all the time. It does not take much to help a small business stay on its feet. Like, if a coffee shop gets an extra $500 a day in revenue from customers, that can mean all the difference. And so you want to feel like a superhero for your own community. You want to feel like you're actually doing something. If you want to feel like your vote matters, use your dollar. Do you want to save the small businesses in your community? Do you want to help Casper advance? Do you want to help the parallel economy emerge? if you do, it doesn't take a whole lot of consumer spending to shift it. Subtle plug, but I'm just saying, like the businesses you've started, the 80,000 on our platform, the incredible community that's rallied around this concept of a parallel economy, free speech platforms like Rumble, great communities that are trying to start up payments solutions, banks. Like there are a lot of innovators that are trying to fix the problem. But if you just kind of in apathy continue to go to the Starbucks and continue to put your head down and continue to just scroll Twitter and doom, you're going to feel like your apathy eats you alive. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy versus if I have $5 to spend and I can choose it where to spend it. You just heard that 42% of businesses aren't about to pay rent. Just missed it the last month. Yeah. You want to help keep them afloat, make sure that you're supporting them instead of these massive monolithic chains that hate you.
Imagine that the economy just totally collapses, but everybody who's buying from public square companies are focused there. So like there's an island of businesses still functioning and they're all American values supporting businesses.
That's the plan.
Yeah, I think it'd be amazing. Probably everyone could go through their list of like weekly purchases, right? And decide that instead of going to a chain or, you know, a different business that doesn't support their values, they're going to intentionally go out of their way to go to the smaller business or to go to a local company that they want to see grow. I think about this with, you know, farmers markets or people who are concerned about, you know, meat or different things in their food. Like some people are already motivated to do that because of their personal values, and they decide that, you know, maybe not being able to just stop at the closest Walmart for something is worth the time and trouble. And I think if people did it in minds of like what they want to see survive in their community, treating every Saturday, so to speak, like a small business Saturday, that's the thing they do after Black Friday. You know, it would really shift, I think, their personal outlook, because it is hard to get constantly, you know, this is going up and this is more expensive and no one can pay anything. On the other hand, I think you're totally right. It's bad news and it's overwhelming when there's no solutions, when you feel like you're powerless and just letting these things crash down upon you. But if you feel like you could potentially affect change, I think people would look at the bad news as sort of a call to action.
Well, and you know, people used to use the excuse of, well, McDonald's is just so much cheaper and these chains are so much cheaper. But you've seen McDonald's is not cheaper, and McDonald's is scoring record profits. Your small business is now the same price and they're not scoring record profits. They're struggling to stay alive. So we do have to make a call as a society. Do you want to live in a society controlled by a few major businesses that are all in bed with a government that's kept them afloat because they prefer their political views? Or do you want Main Street to thrive? I have a strong thesis that over the next decade, America becomes far more balkanized. We embrace balkanization. People embrace their own communities first and foremost. They try to lean in there. They shop local. They support the farmers market. There's a really cool startup called From the Farm that's basically helping like Airbnb, but for farmers markets. You can actually, even some food delivery stuff for local vendors and things. I think more things like that are going to happen over the course of the next decade, because people, I think, are really tired of feeling like, why do I continue to feed the beast if all that it does is spit out nonsense at me and lecture me? And I think at the end of the day too, like everybody's pretty frustrated that in the midst of all of this, and I know that we talked about Ukraine earlier in this, like everybody's pretty frustrated that in the middle of this economic turmoil and feeling like Main Street's a disaster and that it's closed, one after another of all these businesses that are shuttering, we're going to send other countries more of our money. Like that really...
Hundreds of billions of dollars.
It makes me sick. And that's the deep frustration that I hope people channel into doing something different with their money so you can stop feeding the beast.
This is the crazy thing about the Russia story, though. I don't want to get into too much detail, but you've got these pundits being like, we must support Ukraine. You've got this Democrat in Virginia saying, Ukraine's border is our border. And we're learning that the money we send... These people in Ukraine are creating fake companies. How do people think the money gets distributed in Ukraine, right? A portion goes to the local governments, who then choose to give it to no-name businesses that just started last week because they're likely in on the corruption. And then this company gets money. Russian forces advance from the northeast unopposed because the fortifications were never built. Where did that money go? And NPR reported something like $40 million stolen in January. Now we're learning that I think it's something like they reported, I think it was about $175 million in fortifications, just nowhere. We're not supporting Ukraine. They are they're strip mining the U.S. economy and laundering it or something like that.
So what you were talking about in one of the bits today about how the United States is essentially doomed, and that the government, it seems like the government and the bureaucracy is just digging into the trough as much as they can to get as much as they can for themselves to, support themselves for an inevitable collapse. And it's hard not to think that's true. But there is something else that I want to point out about foreign aid that people need to remember. Foreign aid, not only is it inflationary, but also like the point of foreign aid is to get more people using, or to have more people using dollars. So that way it makes the demand for dollars higher, which is inflationary, the demand for dollars would make it deflationary. But it makes people more likely to continue to use dollars and continue to desire to take out our debt. But our debt is the biggest problem we have. It's the reason that we have all these issues here with businesses closing. It all, like, every problem that we have is going to be worse if we don't take care of the debt. So,
well, yeah, and that's, I mean, you just nailed it. If I'm printing dollars in a way that's inflationary in order to give to countries that'll make us feel good that they still need the dollar, you're not actually solving anything. No. You're just perpetuating the problem further because you're weakening the dollar by making it farther inflationary. Like, it's fascinating to witness the collapse of the United States monetary supply due to its debt more than anything else. Like, our debt to GDP ratio, it's just absurd. You talked about the interest payments we're paying earlier. Like,
more than the military now.
Oh, yeah.
More than the military.
Yeah.
More than all of the biggest military in human history. Like, the military that has robots that shoot missiles that are controlled from the other side of the planet. We spend more money paying for the interest on our debt than we do for that whole military, with aircraft carriers, nuclear weapons, planes that are invisible to radar, and all that stuff. And we still pay more just for the interest on the debt.
It's the third highest expense line.
And what happens if we default?
Well, I think that means probably war, because I imagine if there's no more, I imagine the United States would look to use military power to preserve the dollar, because essentially at the end of the day,
it's the only thing that secures it right now.
But
people say it's oil, but it's
that would
actually
be against its own people. Most of the debt that the U.S. holds is debt in the United States from private corporations and people. And the interest is basically because this is ridiculously insane how modern monetary theory works. Mm-hmm. But money is created upon the issuance of debt. So when the U.S. government says we're raising the debt ceiling, they're creating a debt that has to be paid back. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean they're printing money. It means they're agreeing to write an IOU to the people they're paying. So the U.S. government will be like, we want a contractor to build a bridge. Let's say, how much will you do it for? Let's say $50 million. They'll be like, okay, bill us. When they get billed, they pull it from the coffers. And now there is this massive deficit, a huge debt that exists. If they don't pay it, that means a whole bunch of U.S. contractors, companies, private individuals don't get paid. Government employees don't get paid. And yes, many foreign contractors as well. And then the countries that are holding U.S. debt, thinking that it's going to be worth something in the future if they hold on to it, they've already been realizing for the past 10 plus years, it's not going to be worth it, because the U.S. is moving towards insolvency. By 2033, NPR reports Social Security is gone. And then,
yeah.
Aren't you happy you're paying into that?
And there's also
a paycheck.
And also on top of it, like that's what you're talking about. That's why a lot of countries. That's why BRICS is happening. That's why there's the de-dollarization. Like, that is a clear and present danger to the United States, because the less stable the U.S. dollar is, the less stable the United States is, and the less stable the United States is, the more volatile the rest of the world is.
Let's jump to this story from Axios. This is a good one. Biden's polling denial, why he doesn't believe he's behind. This is one of the best headlines I've ever seen, because the corporate press is marching away from the Democratic Party. It's remarkable. From the Bill Maher calling Stormy Daniels a liar, MSNBC actually being forced to defend Donald Trump, and now Axios saying Biden's in denial and won't accept that he's losing. They say President Biden doesn't believe his bad poll numbers, and neither do many of his closest advisors. The dismissiveness of the poor polling is sincere, not spin, according to Democrats who have spoken privately with the president and his team. That bedrock belief has informed Biden's largely steady as she goes campaign, even as many Democrats outside the White House are agitating for the campaign to change direction. In public and private, Biden has been telling anyone who will listen that he's gaining ground and is probably up on Donald Trump. Quote, while the press doesn't write about it, the momentum is clearly in our favor, with the polls moving towards us and away from Trump, Biden told donors during a West Coast swing last week. Confronted with some of his bad poll numbers in a rare interview with CNN, Biden offered a more sweeping indictment of polling methodology. The polling data has been wrong all along. How many, you guys do a poll at CNN, how many folks you have to call to get one response? The latest polling in the 6 battleground states likely to decide the presidential race, Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, doesn't paint a rosy picture for Biden. I'm going to pause. Biden's right. Biden's completely right. Yeah, he's winning. Everybody better redouble their efforts. Tell all their friends, register voters, do whatever you got to do because Biden's winning and Biden said so.
I'm in for that message. If it hypes up our people and doesn't let them get apathetic, then I'm down because this guy cannot. I'm fine with him believing in naivety that he's ahead and that they're going to cruise into the White House, because I am seeing more people than ever who were as left as the day is long in 2020 that are now saying, I don't know what I am, but I'm not that. I'm not with him. He's only up, this New York Times poll, he's only up in one state. I don't know if it showed it in here, but he was up in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
But even there, it was within the margin of error. Like, it's a total disaster. I think it was double digits in Nevada. And Nevada's an interesting state because if you want to look at economic sentiment related to issues like housing or new job growth, you look at Nevada. Tourism is big there too, so you see what kind of consumers are spending money on. And Nevada is in a really desperate and painful place, and Nevada is a spot that votes based upon how their economic standing is doing, and clearly they believe that Bidenomics is not working. And I think that when you also start to break down the same poll that it quotes here into actual demographics, you see that among blacks, Hispanics, women, all different classes economically, he is faltering to a level that is worse than Jimmy Carter was looking before he lost to Reagan. I think this poll also showed that if the election were to happen today, Trump would have well over like 340 electoral votes. So it's a disaster.
There's a couple polls that have replicated similar things. I mean, to me, these statements remind me of how selective reality really is. The fact that he's saying, oh, the mainstream media won't talk about it, but we're actually up. No, the mainstream media talked about it all the time. December, January, they were always saying, no, Biden's way ahead and Trump can't, whatever, and the primaries, and they were always on his side. And now it's becoming such a pattern that they're not able to deny the fact. And again, some of it is within the margin of error, right? Some of it is not that Trump is up by 10, 20 points. It's that it's way more narrow than the media had been saying for months and months and months. In fact, it seems to be really shifting in Trump's favor. Don't forget to vote. You have to vote if you want to see it. Because I just think that is the cynical side of me is, you know, if you can scare conservative-leaning, you know, sort of liberty-minded people into complacency, then you won't see the results of these polls. And again, polling data it can be totally fallible. It really depends on who's putting out the poll, who they're surveying, sort of their methodology. But if it's widespread, if it's repeated by multiple universities and outlets over and over again, it really does seem like Biden is either choosing his own reality or he has bad informants all around him who are not letting him see the fate of his campaign. I
just want to point out, too, that today's an election day, and we really, I think, collectively, culturally, have stopped caring, because at this point, it's a foregone conclusion. It is Trump versus Biden. But just to let everybody know, Trump won West Virginia. He's got 86% beating Nikki Haley, and there's, I think, 22% reporting. But also, this one does matter. Shout out to Riley Moore, who's currently sitting at 45% with 36% reporting. So we're fans of Riley.
Mm-hmm. It looks like they declare for Jim Justice too.
They called it for Jim Justice, huh?
That's what West Virginia Public Radio is saying.
He beat Mooney.
It's really interesting because the effect of taking the presidential campaign out during an election year, for some candidates that might be good, right? You don't have as many voters going to the polls and voting, but for other candidates who need that wave of energy that having a presidential nominee on the ticket would provide, they could suffer. I mean, this is the other thing that we only focus on the president. You have to focus on everything down ticket. Who your state senator is probably going to affect you more directly than who your president is, who your congressman is. It's not that it won't matter, but in terms of what happens to your local community, that happens to your neighborhood, you need to vote in your state elections above all else.
It's true. And a lot of these polls are actually showing that while Biden is disastrously behind, Democrats are actually favored in many of the contentious Senate races. People are split ticketing. It's interesting in these polls. And so to your point, yeah, if all you're thinking about is the presidential election, not a whole lot's going to change.
Because even walking through on the federal level.
People are still conditioned to be like default Democrats.
Yeah,
and so they're still getting used to the idea that the Democrat policies that they've had that they've been living under are actually not working, and they're having tangitive negative results in their lives. There are so many people out there that for the longest time had just bought into well, I'm a Democrat because they're the nice people. Those are the moderates that we're actually trying to reach, and those are the people that I say that are like, okay, these are the liberals that we need to reach to get them to come over to our side or whatever. And the reason is because you get an entire narrative fed to you for 20 years or more. Like just fed to you all the time, whether it be in the news or whether it be Jon Stewart or whether it be in movies, whatever it is, it's always the same narrative. And so you've got people that are just now getting comfortable with the idea that's like, maybe the Democrats are actually wrong. Maybe the policies, maybe it's not just lies from the Republicans. Maybe the bad things that we're seeing, that I'm feeling, maybe it's real. Maybe it's not just lies from the Republicans. Maybe the Republicans aren't just racist. Maybe it isn't just that they're the bad guys and we're the good guys. Maybe the Democrats are actually wrong. So thank goodness that the people are waking up, but it's about time.
So I pulled up 270 to win Senate projection. Right now, Republicans are expected in 2024 to get 50 seats in the Senate. Democrats right now 47, but that's actually 45 Democrats and 2 independents who caucus with Democrats. We're looking at 3 toss-up states.
Yep.
So we've got 3 seats which could be won: Arizona, Montana, and Ohio. And I really feel like Montana.
Jon Tester.
He's awful.
Yeah, it's just, I think we're so polarized. I don't see a reality in which Montana decides. I understand Bozeman's up there, but like West Virginia was Democrat. I think Riley Moore was saying he's the first Republican state treasurer in something like 80 years, something like that.
Long time.
The polarization has, and Manchin, like he's up for re-election in a couple of years, right? Or what's his
Manchin's leaving.
Yep.
Leaving right now or leaving in 2 years?
Well, the Senate race that's going on right now is to fill the seat that he is vacating at the end of his term.
Right. Okay. That's
but it ends this fall, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It ends in November.
That's what I was wondering.
It ends like when this year's turnover happens.
There's no way he could win. There's no way he's winning in West Virginia. That's the issue.
This was a big debate because it was like, is he going to retire? Is he going to declare himself independent? And then he announced, like, I am going to step away. And he sort of has toyed with this idea of running like a uniparty ticket. You saw him sitting with Romney at the State of the Union. It's weird, but I do think that, a Manchin Democrat is very different than an Ilhan Omar Democrat, right? Like, their party is bifurcated in the way that conservative Republican parties are as well. To your point, I think you're totally right. I think people are realizing that this idea that like Democrats are the nice people and therefore voting for them is always a vote for the nice thing isn't always right. I also think that conservatives have become more discerning of who is running with the R on their ticket. I think there were a long time where people would be like, oh, well, I'm, let's say I'm an evangelical, so I'm always going to vote for the Republican because they have my values. Actually, there are faults in the Republican Party, too. There are a lot of Republicans who say they're for certain values and they don't actually represent them or they don't vote for them. Their history doesn't back that up. And I think that is why it's hard, because there are so many races to pay attention to. At the same time, you have your own life. You can't pay attention to every single thing every single candidate says. And discerning which people are true to your values is really important.
Well, and I think a lot of people are blatantly faking it and have been for a long time, and now they're all getting exposed. So a good example, by the way, I feel that about a lot of Democrats and Republicans.
What do you mean flake?
Here's what I mean.
Good.
Like we mentioned Montana earlier, Jon Tester. So Jon Tester is as Democrat progressive as it gets, but every single election cycle, he gets out his old rifle that he's never shot. He
talks about his farm.
He talks about his farm. He talks about his country upbringing, how he's for down home Montana values. And then when you reelect him, he'll go and vote with Ilhan Omar. I know he's obviously in the Senate and she's in the House, but they'll have the same sort of agenda on every single thing. For a while, that would work because people aren't paying attention after the election. But now with how everything's been blown up in social media, you can't get by anymore kind of faking it. And that's a good example.
But check this out. So this is the House interactive map. And we can see that Montana's second is strong Republican, and Montana's first is leaning Republican. I would say, look, if the House, I understand Tesla's got the incumbent advantage, and that's probably why they're saying it's a toss-up. I'm saying you look at this, Trump supporters and Republicans and young people are pushing for the Republican Party. It is a really good point that everyone's just screaming Trump's name, and people got to get local and make sure they're focusing on those local races. Because you take a look down here at Colorado's Lauren Boebert, she's switching to 04. But that one's leaning red. Democrats are going to pull some surprise moves. Here's what concerns me about Joe Biden saying, I'm actually ahead. Shadow campaign. The reason Joe Biden is saying he's ahead in the polls is not because he's actually ahead in the polls, he's behind, but it's because they got a plan. And there's got to be something that happens. So remember in 2020, they said the red mirage. Watch out for the red mirage because it'll look like Trump's winning. But then in the middle of the night, it'll change. And then when it happened, they went, see, we told you it was going to happen. Doesn't mean there's nothing weird about it. It just means you said it was going to happen. In fact, that's actually kind of weird that you told us it was going to happen. So if you look at Biden now saying, I'm actually ahead in the polls and the polls are wrong. Then if something weird happens and Biden ends up winning, he's going to then go, we told you he was ahead the whole time. You just didn't listen.
Yeah, I think it's true. I mean, this is the interesting thing about Biden, which is I don't think his campaign actually wants him to talk at all. So if he's saying, I'm ahead, maybe his campaign is like, shh, let them think they're winning. It's hard to say. I think the biggest issue is maybe just the apathy and negativity that Americans feel right now. Like if you feel like there is no path forward, maybe you are not going to vote because you just feel doomed. And I think that sense of this is not something, our economic problems, our cultural tensions, if you feel like there's something you can't overcome by voting, that's the issue I think all candidates have to fight against.
Well, I think there is some good news in this, and that's that Democrats now, especially younger ones, a lot of these polls are revealed, cannot stand Biden on three key issues. Number one, they believe he's these are Dems, by the way. So young, progressive Gen Zs cannot stand the way that Biden's handled Israel and Gaza. That's number one. Number two is they feel like he has not fixed or fulfilled on all the promises related to student loans that he would. And number three is that he has not taxed the rich like he said he would. There was a new report that came out that the wealthiest billionaires are paying less in taxes than somebody making 80 grand a year because they're not taking an income. They make 80 grand on their salary, or sometimes often just report a zero, but they take all the tax breaks that Trump called out in 2016 that are employed by all of Hillary Clinton's donors. Y'all remember this wonderful debate. So Gen Z feels like they've been screwed by Biden. That's really prevalent among young women. Then Gen Z men are leaning more and more conservative, and they're starting to show up at the polls and actually represent their political views that are leaning hard right in a way that we haven't seen in a long time. And so my hope would be that Dems have a ton of apathy going into the fall because they feel like Biden hasn't performed and they can't stand the guy. You see, by the way, Dems are predicting this, which is why they're rushing to put all this abortion stuff on the state ballots because they're trying to just get any young Gen Z women to show up because that's the only demographic they actually want in the midterms. So they're trying to drive traffic to the polls. It's not working. It's not translating because they cannot stand Biden. Meanwhile, hopefully, if conservatives will get up off their butts and not be apathetic and drive young turnout and minority turnout, holy cow, I mean, we could actually experience a lot of breakthrough here, but we cannot get apathetic. I know we've said that word like 30 times in the show so far, but I feel that so strongly. Like if we embrace apathy heading into November, because a lot of people are just tired and pissed off, we're going to deal with a whole lot worse circumstances in 4 years where you won't even be able to afford to be apathetic. You're going to be forced to pay attention, and that's not what any of us want.
I feel like maybe people need to reframe how we're seeing everything and look at it not as despair, but as a grand adventure.
Opportunity.
Every generation is faced with a challenge. This is ours. It's not something to be upset about. It's not something to shy away from. It's something to recognize within yourself that there are some people who are not cut out for conflict. Some people more than others. Some people so much so they become warriors who fight on the front lines in physical combat brave men and women in uniform going to places that most of us would not go under any circumstances. Some people go there for nothing other than the purpose and the need to serve their country. Then there are people who engage in public sector life, and I mean good people. There's a small handful in Congress. Many of them are not good people. But I look at, talking to Riley Moore, just like choosing to wait around in the swamp. It's like, I know Riley's a good dude, and so I'm glad he's going in. But at the same time, it's like you are going to be fighting swamp monsters on an uphill battle, and it's so brutal. But there are some people who we can actually trust and hope will do right. And so I say to everybody, don't get upset at the news. The news is always bad because good news is it doesn't put us at risk. It's like if we got breaking news that, the economy is great, you'd feel it, you'd feel good, and you wouldn't have to worry about it. People only start to worry when things are getting bad and they're starting to wonder why that is. And so my view of this is when I'm reading the news all day and people say like, how are you not getting so down by it? I'm like, this is the adventure, man. We are here. We are men of action. We are here to ensure a better life for those that come after us. Yep. If that's not for you and you'd rather hang out, watch the game, then I feel bad. I wish you would stand alongside us. But at the same time, that guy I was mentioning earlier in the show, he just wanted to play poker. He says, the news is too negative for me. I say, well, covering the news, focusing on it is the little bit that I do so that you can enjoy a nice game of poker and not have to think twice about it. And then I throw it to the men and women in uniform. That's why I'm a huge fan of Tunnels to Towers and things like that. Because the men and women in uniform are doing the real work. Firefighters, yes, police officers. I know chat's gonna go nuts, but the actual first responders who are out there every day so that we can sit in a safe room. That being said, I do like West Virginia because constitutional carry, better security, big open spaces. But there are people who put their lives on the line every single day so that you can sit in your living room and watch the game, hang out with your buddies, and not have to think about it. And you can choose to be that, and there's nothing wrong with that because people are building that world for you. Soldiers are fighting battles for you. Police are out there. Firefighters out there. EMTs are out there so that you can live comfortably and don't have to live in that world. And then other people are called to action. So my view is when you see the news, you should feel resolve. When you hear about the economic closures, when you hear about the Democrats' new policies going to let more criminals out, you should feel that fire inside you light you up and say, this is why you are here. This is your purpose. And you have a mission. And the mission can be simple. Live a good life, raise your family, and be vigilant. Your mission can be more than that. It can be a call to action to be a police officer, be a firefighter, to be an EMT, or serve your country. Or it can be to be one of the few good people in Congress. But if you feel the despair because the news is bad, then maybe it is important that you decide to live the world of comfort that other people will fight for. I don't think there's any shame in that. I think the brave men and women in uniform, be it from civil service to military service, know full well that they're doing this for you so that you can have a better life. I respect it. I look forward to every day waking up and doing the little bit that we do here. And there are certainly people doing substantially more than we do. And speaking of that, let's jump to this next story from NPR. Ukraine says corrupt officials stole $40 million meant to buy arms for the war. This was first reported January 28th, 2024. Well, I got an update for you. This is from Pravda.ua, a Ukrainian newspaper. They write, where are the fortifications? Kharkiv OVA paid millions to fictitious companies, but millions? That's hundreds of millions of hryvnias. That's the Ukrainian currency, possibly stolen. They mention a total of 7 billion hryvnias were spent there, poured by the Kharkiv OVA to the front companies of avatars. It's a poor translation. What they're basically saying is these companies don't exist and were paid out millions or hundreds of millions of dollars. And now the Russian forces are actively advancing. And the New York Times is reporting that a Ukrainian general paints a bleak picture. A CIA official said Ukraine could lose by the end of the year. And so just a moment ago, for those that did not hear it, I was talking about the brave men and women in uniform, the civil service here in this country to the military service. What bothers me the most about the spending of this money is, one, it rips it from the middle class. It takes it from people who are, I see every day in the chat saying, I'm suffering from cancer. I can't pay my rent. I'm living in my car. And this money, which is a drag on our labor in this country, is being given to corrupt officials for what reason? Why do we have to spend money and send our brave men and women in uniform to foreign countries in military bases we set up all over the world while our border is cracked wide open. We have crime rampant in our streets, and the people who are dedicating their lives to serve the people of this country are being redirected to nonsensical endeavors overseas while the people back home are suffering, and our tax dollars, our buying power, and our resources are stripped away and sent to corrupt officials and fake companies and criminals, outright criminals, in a country most people can't find on a map.
It's true. More new millionaires in Ukraine created over the last year than in any year of their nation's existence.
It was almost like it was about getting the money and not about anything else.
Everyone knew that Ukraine was considered the most corrupt country in Europe, or one of the most corrupt countries in Europe. This was baked into the cake as soon as we started sending them cash payments and the support. I know that there's been some arms that have gone, but there's just been, they've been shoveling dollars into Ukraine like mad. And
there's been
that's
a
what
lot
happens.
of reports saying that we weren't tracking it. We didn't know where the money was going. It was being sent. Like the fact that, it turns out it wasn't ending up where it was supposed to be is exactly the plot line we all could have predicted. It is wild to me, because if you're the American people and you're saying like, hey, my city needs a new bridge. Hey, what's going on with the border? That's not secure at all. Hey, this is an issue that's facing my community. The federal government said to you, we don't care. We'd actually rather just literally throw money away, never to see it turn into anything in Ukraine, than to help you. And that is not a message for a people that is trying to become a strong culture and a strong force in the world.
Well, and I can't remember who said this, but the basic adage was the government needs transparency and the people need freedom. And the point was, it's the goal of a government to protect the freedoms of the people, because that's what we, the people, deserve. And then what we expect in turn from the government is transparency, because they work for us. But what's fascinating is so I'm the CEO of a publicly traded company, and every quarter we go through a quarterly review on our 10Q, and we have auditors look at our financial statements. And if we even misplace $5, it is under the most strict set of review guidance and parameters. Then you do your end of the year actual formal audit where you have to report year-end financial results, and they comb through every single line item because they're auditors. That's their job. The SEC has the right to review those forms and hold companies accountable or their auditors accountable if there's anything fraudulent on those forms. And so this is a very strict process that we spend lots of money on, and time and energy and resources. And we're just a company, that's making our way and growing and advancing every day. But we're not even $1 billion. We're $150 million. What happens when the U.S. government, that is in control of all of our lives and billions of dollars that we can send overseas, misplaces $5 billion of it as it's on the way to deliver arms? And they are under no review. No auditors are banging down their door. The SEC's not calling them. The IRS is not calling them and saying, what are you doing with the U.S. taxpayer dollars that you're misplacing billions of it? They're under no penalty. And so they just feel like the last 10 years has just been an experiment in how much can they get away with.
Right. There was this year during the budget hearings, I think it was the Defense Department was asked, what happened to this several $1 million? And they were like, we don't know.
We don't know.
Haha. Anyways, more please. Like, they're held to a standard which the American people and the American businesses are not held to. If you were to say don't know, they would be like, great, fines. Potential criminal and all kinds of punishments coming your way.
Yep.
But the federal government, all of its agencies, and Ukraine are not held to the standard that we hold American people. We punish American people for things that we turn a blind eye to for other people. That's not America first, and this is not a value that I would support for a government going forward.
Nope. We don't even have $5 billion for a border wall, they said. So they'll misplace $5 billion in Ukraine, but we don't have $5 billion for a border wall here.
Misplace.
We don't know what happened.
Yeah. It's just gone.
It's a few pennies here or there.
In all seriousness, though, imagine you're like some gutter crust Ukrainian dude living in the borders of the Donbass, and then you hear in the news that the U.S. is giving $100 billion to your country, and then your local government says, we're looking for contractors to build fortifications, and you're like, I have a company. And they're like, how much do you want? 10 million hryvnia? And they're like, here you go. It's like, and then he just runs off. Mm-hmm. I mean, talk about a payday. I'm jealous of that guy.
Well, and I've heard that a lot of the companies actually on the ground that could do the work in Ukraine that are supposed to be receiving the U.S. aid are not actually the ones receiving the money. It's government officials that'll spin up these little shell corps, funnel the money into it that was never real in the first place, not real contractors, and then they flee the country. They head to Monaco and they buy the yacht with the money. So not only is the money being dumped into fruitless endeavors, they're not even real endeavors. Like, it'd be one thing if we were taking our money and funding Sergey, the contractor who's got a business near, the Donbass region that's going to build a new bridge. That'd be one thing. I'd still be against it. But it's a whole nother thing when the money never even gets to that guy. His quality of life's not improving. So while he's being invaded, his quality of life still sucks, and he has no business, even though he's reading the headlines saying the United States is about to fund me. Yay! But then instead, it's the local city official that takes that money that was supposed to go to him and bounces.
Or what if it's not actually local officials or local criminals, but that's the patsy? And the real issue is that international interests and U.S. corrupt officials are funneling it to themselves. I mean, I just like to recall Hunter Biden being on the board of Burisma.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much question about whether or not there's back channels, people getting in the U.S. getting money from this. This is, if it's not getting it directly, then they're getting it through funds going to weapons manufacturers here, and then the weapon manufacturers supporting their candidacy, or some version of that, or something like that. Some other way where the U.S. pays money to a corporation or to Ukraine, and Ukraine buys weapons, and the money gets back to the people that have passed the laws. This is fairly boilerplate corruption.
Right. Surely we wouldn't just be sending billions of dollars to Ukraine and Israel if no one was making money off it at home, right? Like, our politicians couldn't be that bad. Corrupt, maybe, but not stupid.
With the Israeli money, at least you see what they're doing with it. With the Ukraine money, you don't see what they're doing with it. They're like, you know that they're losing. You know that they're losing thousands of people. Well, I don't know what the numbers are, but you know that hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians have died and a lot of Russians have died, but they're not obviously stopping the Russians.
They're obviously not dealing with domestic issues. Like, that's my biggest complaint overall. Like, with Ukraine, it's so blatant, but for any country to receive tons and tons of money, it's a prioritization of international conflict over domestic needs. And I just don't think that's something that Americans can really stomach for any longer. We shouldn't have been doing this in the first place. We fund conflicts from every side. We really mess up all kinds of geopolitical landscapes, and to the detriment of people at home.
Yep. It's that classic meme where it's the rockets flying from both directions and it says my tax dollars, somehow also my tax dollars. It's true. You know, it's interesting too about the Israel versus Ukraine debate when you look at the transparency on where the funding's going. I think part of the reason the United States has been able to dump so much money into Ukraine, carte blanche, without any repercussions or transparency or accountability, is because the international community is sort of, at this point, turned a blind eye. The international community now has placed a ton of scrutiny and accountability on Israel, and regardless of how you feel on that issue, the point is the world is paying a lot more attention to what Israel's doing than what Ukraine's doing. And so I think it's, Biden, you can argue whether or not he's making an about face on Israel now, trying to kind of strip aid and fight his own Democrats in the party because he's trying to appease those Gen Z voters we talked about earlier, or is it because he knows he can't just get away with everything now in Israel because they've got a heavy eye on them from the international angle? I don't know, because Ukraine's been this money laundering pot that nobody's paying attention to, and the world's focusing on Israel. So it doesn't surprise me that Biden's like, let's just keep funneling money to Ukraine and we're not going to worry too much about continuing to fund Israel, because originally Biden was like all in funding Netanyahu, and now he's all of a sudden making kind of an about face, and it's very interesting to see why.
I think that's because of his poll numbers. I think that he would be funding Israel or more pro-Israel if it wasn't for the fact that the young people and
weren't turning against him for it.
Yeah, no, but it's not just the young people, and it's the more far left, kind of more vocal people in the Democrat Party that are turning against him for it, because they're the ones that are actually like pro-Hamas and stuff.
Yeah, it's wild.
And then as for the Ukraine stuff, I mean, it's the Ukraine stuff is it puts us in a position where it's possible that there could be a nuclear exchange, and even people, some people say it's unlikely, some people don't think it's unlikely, but I don't see the only benefit that you hear from anyone that talks about like geopolitical stuff. The only benefit the U.S. gets out of this is it weakens Russia, right? So Russia spends, you essentially you throw a bunch of Russian people into the meat grinder and get them killed, and they spend a bunch of money and weapons, and that weakens them. So that makes the United States better off. I mean, you can say that, or you can make that argument. I don't think that it's worth the risk, because I don't think that Russia's actually all that much of a geopolitical threat to the United States, and I don't think that using that that inflaming tensions with Russia and Ukraine and possibly putting NATO into a position where they get into conflict with Russia is in anyone's interest.
Well, that's what's nuts. You have actual diehard warmongers that genuinely, I don't know if they believe it, but they tell you it like they do, that if Ukraine falls, Putin will invade France. And it's like,
that's clown show.
You can't be serious.
But they've made Russia into this huge monster, right? Like, not to say that Russia is perfect in any way, but it's like, we have to do anything to stop Russia, and I will give you several hysterical scenarios of what could happen. Like, that's how they were able to say, like, not only do the Ukrainian people need our support, again, loss of life is bad, like, I understand that aspect of it, the empathy, but on top of that, it's actually the collapse of the world, and World War III is upon us all the time. I think this is the issue that, you know, whereas, you know, in contrast, the Israel-Palestine-Hamas issue, you know, American voters are much more divided on it, and so you're able to hold a level of scrutiny to how we're spending money that we weren't. With Ukraine, it was like, you have to do anything to stop Russia at all costs.
The thing is,
don't even ask what Russia is doing.
The thing is, even if Russia takes over Ukraine, right, it's not like Russia's going to go in there and kill all the Ukrainians. Right? If Gaza had their way with Israel, they would kill all the Israelis.
I don't even know how many Ukrainians are actually left.
I mean,
no, but this is true.
I don't care who runs Ukraine. You know what I mean?
Millions have fled. Cities are displaced. The eastern region is seriously damaged from war, and even the people I know from Ukraine they left the country a long time ago, and they're posting happy photos from various parts of Europe. So at this point, if Russia were to take the Donbass, I think the big issue for the United States is that the U.S. is trying to control energy in the region. Yep. Russia controlling the Donbass secures their position in the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. And then the only other option the U.S. has is to pressure Turkey to cut off Russia's access from the Bosphorus, which they will not do. And so if the U.S. does not win in Ukraine, they cannot push Russia out of the Mediterranean, which is what we're trying. The United States, I say we, but it's the U.S. I'm against it.
Well, and that's where, you know, the United States, my biggest beef with all of this, besides the funding issue from the beginning, because I just don't get me wrong, I want peace, and I want people to create these mutually agreeable deals that provide a sense of statesmanship and amicability between nations. I just don't really care. At the end of the day, like, I don't want to fund it. I don't want to touch it. We have our own problems here. Like, have you seen New York recently? It's a total mess. But my big thing is, besides that, I've always just wanted to know, what the heck's the plan? Like, if you're going to take my money, this is another thing. Like, if I'm going to invest my money in something, I expect to know the roadmap. Show me the deck. Show me what your plan is. And they've never had a plan. And the few plans that they've been willing to share about what peace would look like are completely unrealistic. You're not going to get Crimea. It's not. You're not. Ukraine's not going to hold Crimea forever. No. It's not going to happen. So stating that as some sort of realistic expectation or a litmus test for when we will finally back off, it's been irrational from day one.
Crimea means World War III.
It does.
Russia will not allow. This is where their Black Sea fleet is based. They have a naval base there. It's been there forever. The U.S. The war we're in now is because the U.S. was gaining too much influence with the Ukrainian government, the ouster of Yanukovych, leading to a more favorable EU Western president, puts Russia on high alert. They have their quote-unquote referendum. They take Crimea. How did they take Crimea? They took 2 steps out of their naval base and said, we're here, and that was it. But they needed land access because they have a single bridge from Crimea to Russian territory. So they said, we need to secure land access. And once it became apparent, see, with Donald Trump in office, Putin's not worried about it. Trump's in office, and he's like, this guy doesn't want to go to war. He doesn't want this. We don't have much to worry about. We're going to be able to get our shipments in and out. Biden gets elected, and Putin's like, here we go. And that's why we end up with war. Yeah. If the U.S. wants to press this, then World War III. And that's why it really is insane to see what's going on with Israel, Taiwan, and Ukraine and all this funding. And then Trump's like, it's going to be World War III unless I get elected. And it's like, my fear is that the snowball's rolling down the hill already, and I don't know how much Trump could avert at this point, considering how far we've already gone.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question. How much do you think America turning an about face now would stop the actors that are in motion? I don't know the answer to that. It's probably regional. Like, given that China hasn't made direct moves, I'd say that a Trump election in the fall, because he's been super bullish on the idea that, you know, China cannot touch Taiwan, maybe that is thwarted. But are you going to stop the Israel-Gaza conflict now? Are you going to stop Ukraine and Russia through an election? I don't know. I would hope so.
Let's jump to some domestic news with a tweet from Patrick Bet David, who says it's official. Chris Cuomo and Dave Smith have agreed to do a sit down with a live audience. PBD podcast, May 31st at 6 p.m. And the hiring of Chris Cuomo, I believe he officially works for PBD. I don't want to get that wrong, but I believe he's like officially a part of their crew, whatever, has been contentious. And there's some e-drama, but I think there's an interesting question around the hiring of Cuomo and what you guys think. But we'll start from the beginning here. When it was announced that PBD hired Chris Cuomo, I said, I think this is a massive mistake. This is a guy who went on his show on CNN, mocked people for eating horse paste, joked about COVID with gigantic oversized Q-tips. His brother was putting sick people in nursing homes, resulting in an estimated 15 to 18,000 dead. Blamed Trump, said, well, Trump said this. Not even true. Numerous outlets fact-checked this. And it's funny because normally I'm not a big fan of the corporate press, but it was so ubiquitous in the press that Trump never said to put sick patients in nursing homes. But we saw many Democrat governors do this, and just Democrat governors. Here's a guy now who apparently has gone on, I think he was on PBD, I'm not sure where he was on, saying that he's actually suffering from side effects or some kind of, some kind of side effect or I don't know what something like that. And he's taking ivermectin now. Now, I certainly do believe in redemption, but it is tough for me because Chris Cuomo was such an egregious actor as a component of CNN. I wonder, what is the purpose of trying to rehabilitate a guy with no following, who offers up nothing other than he would sell you to your death during the lockdowns? I don't quite understand why they brought him on. Now, Patrick Bet David had said he wants to, be more neutral and bring in the other side. My rebuttal is Chris Cuomo doesn't represent the other side.
Nope.
He was a corporate employee of a news outlet. He did not have a big following. There's no Chris Cuomo big fan base. His viewership on News Nation is relatively low. This idea, so perhaps it's just an oversight on PBD's part, or that's what he truly thinks, and I'm wrong, and that's fine. And I will lightly address the earlier tweet controversy, which is actually quite hilarious. I didn't know Patrick Bet David was mad, but I actually got asked to do this debate. So I don't know exactly how it happened. I was contacted by a company that does PR work for us, and they asked me if I would debate Chris Cuomo on PBD's show Saturday morning. And I said, it's impossible because we do a live show Friday night. And there's no flights. Like if we left the show Friday night, I get to the airport at 11, best case scenario, 11:30. And then if there's no flights to Miami. So the only way we could do a Saturday morning show is if I got a private jet. I don't know if that's something they can do. And then I hear back from this PR company saying, they said, what about doing a Saturday night debate with Cuomo? And I was like, look, I'd love to sit down and do this conversation, because I was like, I tweeted these two questions. What do you think your son learned from you when he watched you emerge from your basement after faking being in COVID lockdown? Do you think he learned more from you, or do you think he'll take more after your brother who murdered people and then tried to blame it on Trump? I'd love to sit down with this guy. But doing a Saturday night show, I said, well, that would mean wrap the show, go to bed, wake up. Then it's packing, travel to the airport, hour, commercial flight, 3.5 hours, plus an hour each way in the airport. So hour to the airport, hour wait in the airport, security, all that stuff. 3.5 hour flight, hour from the airport to the destination to arrive just in time for a podcast, do the debate, go to sleep, wake up, same routine on the plane. And I was like, the challenge is by the time I get back Sunday, I have done 14 hours of airline travel in 2 days, and then I have to record a show on Monday morning. I don't think I can do it. So, unless we can do a private jet, it's not possible. And then I guess PBD got offended. I don't know if he knew the full context or whatever. And I responded. Someone asked, why don't we do this? I said, actually, I turned it down. And that's not to imply there's anything wrong with their debate. I was upset about their debate, or that I was like, how dare you? I refused to do it. I was just like, yeah, I said I couldn't do it. And PBD tweeted at me, got mad. And I think he may have misinterpreted my tweet as to imply something negative about his debate. Whereas my point was simply, we'd love to have Chris Cuomo here. I would love to see Dave Smith rag on him. I think this is going to be epic. Dave Smith is a way better choice than me. And I was unable to do it because of scheduling constraints. And so there's that. Now that that's been addressed, the big question is there a redemption arc for someone like Chris Cuomo, knowing everything we know about what he said? He's the guy who went on CNN and said, who said protests should be peaceful, need to be peaceful. While people were burning down police stations. People died. A retired police captain, David Dorn, was shot and killed during these riots. And Cuomo goes on TV and says, who says they have to be peaceful? I'm like, dude, people are being murdered. Small businesses have put up things in their windows saying, please don't hurt us. Is there a redemption for this guy?
Only if he admits he was wrong. If he admits he was wrong and admits, even in this debate, that he made a lot of egregious statements in the heat of emotion during COVID, or he was listening to his corporate overlords and he was just following orders and now he realizes it was a mistake, or he shouldn't have backed his brother, but family ties, he just had to. Like, if you admit you were wrong, then yeah, absolutely. I would love to hear you talk and let's hear what you have to say. And I will even give you a fraction of the benefit of the doubt that you might be genuine. But the fact that he's papering over it like he never made those comments shows me that he's a total fraud. There's zero redemption arc for someone like this who's not willing to admit. They just want to gaslight you to believe they never said these things in the first place. And by the way, he's not the only one. There are tons of people asking for COVID redemption. We didn't know. It's like, no, we knew, and we were quieted, silenced. I mean, I knew.
Look at the mask flip-flopping.
Yep.
And the lockdown.
Ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine.
There's so much mask flip-flopping, but there's the lockdown flip-flopping, I think, is the hilarious element of it. Democrat politicians being like, I never said we should force businesses to lock down, and then Defiant L's on Twitter will post them
the video reels.
Or it's like two tweets where one's like, it is important that every business shut down whether they believe they should or not because we're all in this together, and then a year later, like, I never said that. I suppose the question I have, or I suppose my feeling on the issue is, I talked about Joey Salads a while ago. He's not really been, in the limelight these past few years, but his big thing was several years ago, he filmed a fake video where he put a car in a parking lot with like Trump stuff inside of it and then hired black dudes to destroy it. And he made a video where he's like, what'll happen if I leave a car in this neighborhood with all this Trump stuff on it? And then faked it and someone caught him doing it. I insulted him. I said, screw you. You're fake news. You're a liar. You're a bad guy. And then I thought about it. He had a lot of fans. And I was like, if this guy has a big following and he has no redemption opportunities, the only direction he can go is toward the darkness. So if we say, I accept your apology, do better, welcome to the right side.
Absolutely.
Then you bring someone into the fold. That being said, I don't know if Chris Cuomo is redeemable in that regard. Joey Salads was a guy who was just like, this video makes me views, and was kind of bumbling about and just getting wrapped up in chasing algorithms and making fake videos. Chris Cuomo is a guy who knowingly goes on a show every night for years and just does what he's told. My concern is in the difference, and maybe there's not a big enough difference. Maybe it is fair to say Cuomo deserves redemption or Joey didn't, or whatever it is. My concern is that Chris Cuomo doesn't care at all, doesn't feel any remorse. He's simply saying, this boat is sinking. I better jump to the one to my left. Or in this instance, to his right. And now he's trying to make it seem like I'm on your side, guys. Someone posted a meme of him, the Steve Buscemi thing, where he's got the skateboard from 30 Rock. And it was Chris Cuomo saying, how do you do, fellow conservatives?
Funny.
It's pretty clear that he's just trying to save his own neck, or he's doing what he can to save his career. I mean, I don't think that, well, okay, I can't speak for anyone else, but I never expected a whole lot of integrity out of people from CNN, or I haven't expected a lot of integrity out of them. The behavior isn't a surprise. Nobody should be surprised. I'm not surprised that he's got another job in the media, because at the end of the day, it's clicks that people are looking for nowadays. And I think that even if he is getting hate clicks, if he's the guy that people hate on PBD's channel, then
you can make money off of being
clicks
a villain.
or clicks, absolutely. So, he's going to do what he needs to do to try and, pay his bills and make sure that he can,
This is something that Ian brought up, which is a really good point, because we talk about Chris Cuomo faking the quarantine. I mean, that is like, holy crap, above and beyond. And the story, for those not familiar, is Cuomo was on CNN every night being like, I'm here in quarantine, look at me, I've been working out, I'm sweaty. And then he goes on his radio show and says, some guy with a fat tire bike is talking to me. Don't you talk to me? Which kind of exposed him as admitting he had traveled out of quarantine. Some guy riding his bike saw him and said, aren't you supposed to be in quarantine? You're on TV every night. And Cuomo starts yelling at him, basically admits it, proves the story's real. Ian points out, we talked about how on CNN he emerges from the basement It's nuts. I think it was even like Nate Silver was like, it is insane that CNN thought they could pull that off when everyone knew how big the story was, that he had faked that he was out of quarantine. Ian pointed out, as he's walking up, his son is sitting there watching him do it. Think about what you tell your child when you're like, I'm now going to go on TV. We're going to blast this message out to a couple hundred people that are watching CNN. I'm being a dick, but your kid watches you lie to the world. And I wonder if his kid asked him, like, Dad, that's not true. Why did you say that? Or if his kid just says lying is okay. We should be liars.
That's the lesson he's learning, certainly. I mean, I think, somebody can be really a candidate for a beautiful redemption story, and that doesn't mean you ever put them on TV again. So, there are lots of criminals, and by the way, I do think Chris Cuomo is a criminal. I mean that full-heartedly. Mm-hmm. His rhetoric led to people probably withholding treatment from themselves that could have made them better because they were afraid of looking like a lunatic that took horse pills.
Well, I want to mention specifically is the people who died during the Summer of Love riots.
Yes.
We had someone...
David Dorn's a perfect example.
And he's the guy on TV saying, he's the guy on TV saying, who says these protests have to be peaceful?
Yep.
I think most importantly is the whole debate at the time, especially around the medical stuff, and there was this twofold scenario where they would go on TV and tell you what to do or not to do. And this is the remarkable thing, be it Fauci, be it Cuomo, be it Anderson Cooper, any one of these people on the corporate press, celebrities would tell you what medical treatment you should get despite not being doctors. And if anyone else said something comparable, you'd be banned, you'd be censored, you'd be shut down. So I have no problem saying this, and to all of our friends at YouTube, we're not doctors. We're not here to give medical advice. I don't know. Don't look at me. But Chris Cuomo, he can go on CNN, Anderson Cooper, they can go on CNN and give medical advice all day, every day, mock you. The thing about ivermectin specifically is that doctors actually prescribed it. Now, I assume they must be crazy doctors because YouTube says you're not allowed to do that. Well, I don't know. I just tell people go talk to your doctor. We're not medical experts here, but Chris Cuomo mocked people. Now, the crazy thing about it, and the worst part about what he did is, like, you can get prescribed it if you have worms.
Yes, it's one of the most commonly used medicines in all of Africa.
There was a Nobel
Peace
Award
Prize.
over
Yes.
it. Not a
Peace Prize, but a Nobel Prize for the development of the medicine from the guy who actually created it.
Yeah. Remember what they did to Joe Rogan? I think it was CNN, right?
Yeah.
They made him look pale and weird and sickly.
Yellow and gangrene looking.
Yo, that is so
They're
wild.
super ethical.
So, anyway,
so gross.
not to get into all that. I guess the big question is that I see a lot of people are on Twitter up in arms about. There are a lot of people who I think are actually good, are cool with Cuomo being brought onto the PBD network and all that stuff. And there are a lot of people that are basically saying he's going full CNN by pulling him in. I don't know.
It seems to me like if you want redemption, you have to be honest about what happened, right? Mm-hmm. Like you'd have to acknowledge, like, yes, I said these things. Yes, like I faked being quarantined or whatever the problem is. And then, walk everyone through how we got to the other end. Otherwise, it just seems like, well, I was getting paid to do one thing and they're not paying me anymore, so I'm going to do the other thing. And that's obviously what's disingenuous. I don't follow a ton of Chris Cuomo's content. I don't know if someone has directly asked him about these things. I don't think so. But until he has openly addressed the controversy, I don't think that there is a way that he could seem trustworthy to most Americans. He'll always have the same bias.
Maybe he did. I don't know. I don't watch his stuff, so I'll give it that much.
He doubled down on a lot with Tucker in that interview. Like he's still got his. And by the way, I believe in these redemption arc stories. Even you talk about like accepting those folks that have kind of reformed in their thinking and come into the movement and been like, dang, I was wrong. And they detail the path because we've all been wrong on stuff.
To other people,
it can be amazing. I think of a perfect example. I'm a big fan of Tulsi Gabbard. 10 years ago, most of what Tulsi Gabbard said probably would have repulsed me. Today, though, and I've witnessed over the last decade, like the way that she's become a leader in the movement for human liberties and flourishing in our country, and especially with her position in the military, now speaking out against all this foreign aid, trying to protect our borders. Like, she has proven and put the time in over the years that she really is for this movement. Chris Cuomo just arose 2 years later and is like, now I'm going to act like I still deserve a position of authority in your life, and I did nothing to earn it.
I just want to say, though, I think it's a great debate. I'm glad they're doing it. I look forward to Dave Smith. He's
funny.
fantastic. And I think it's going to be a really interesting and widely viewed show. So shout out, good luck PBD with that one. And Dave Smith is an excellent choice for this. But let's jump to this next story. Degeneracy. I love this. It's so sad. OnlyFans drugs and 9/11 taunts. Dublin to New York portal taken offline over inappropriate behavior. The innovative sculptures linked the two cities together, but were soon hijacked by people intent on antisocial antics. So I don't know how many of you guys saw this story, but we have the this portal sculpture they built. It's got a camera on it and a screen, and it's basically just an active live stream because the people who put it together apparently never heard of the "He Will Not Divide Us" campaign by Shia LaBeouf.
The best scavenger hunt of all time.
That's right. And so I remember, so they basically built these two screens that broadcast to New York and Dublin. And, oh, look how cute it is. At first, it was, "Hello from New York. We love you, Dublin." And I don't know if they actually have the photos in here, but some, like, there you go, some hooker walks up and just flashes the thing. This was really interesting. This is what really was really interesting. So they shut it down because they're like, people were doing drugs in front of it and just like crazy stuff. In New York, you are legally allowed, women are legally allowed to take their tops off and walk around, you know, their boobs flopping around. There was a ruling that it is unconstitutional. It's a violation of civil human rights law to have different standards for men and women. So if men can be shirtless, women can be shirtless. I kind of felt like the solution is men should wear shirts, but, you know, whatever.
Yeah, can't we just make men not allowed to be shirtless in New York?
Like
I would prefer that, actually.
You can go that way, too. It's like, guys, start wearing shirts.
Yeah.
But anyway, the thing is, what she's doing is not illegal. She is in New York, where it is legal to be topless. I don't know the law in Dublin, but I was just thinking, like, there are a lot of things in New York that are legal that are not legal in Dublin, and vice versa. And so that means what she's doing, like, I don't know, is there a crime being committed? Because are there kids who can see this, maybe? You know what I mean?
Yeah, is it like an indecent exposure violation?
Not in New York. If she goes to Dublin, does she
but
get
if I'm
arrested?
exposing myself to someone in Dublin, how does that work?
In New York City,
you couldn't obviously hold anybody accountable for it from Ireland. But
women are allowed to be topless. So that means there are women who walk around New York topless, and kids, anybody can see them. It's not illegal. But in Dublin, like if she flies there, would she go to jail? If the guy doing drugs, like what is? I don't know. I suppose the story is just funny because, like, what did you expect to happen?
Yeah, this was never going to go anywhere good.
It shows you someone in society is optimistic, right? They were like, we can put this out there and it'll just be like a nice thing where people wave at each other. Like, that's almost adorable, you know? I hope there are more people like that. I think the girl flashing the camera is obviously completely self-absorbed. I think the fact that you were like, you know what everyone needs to see right now? Me. You know, that's not a great representation of American culture. I'm sad that this is our export to Ireland. But I don't know of any time when someone was like, well, we're going to leave a live webcam streaming just on and on and on. Like, no one has ever been like, great idea. Let's do it. No liability.
There was the other one
good.
that broke Shia LaBeouf in.
Yeah,
He Will Not Divide Us.
kept
Yeah.
moving it and people would do all kinds of stuff. But then
broke that man
kept,
right in half.
and it was a game after that, which is hilarious.
It was awesome because I went there several times. Like, I'm in New York and I heard about it and I'm like, I'm going to go check this out. And it was a party. Shia LaBeouf set up a live stream where it was called "He Will Not Divide Us," and there was like an active live stream.
This is anti-Trump, yeah.
And then people started going and holding up signs and doing weird, crazy things. And so it
4chan things.
Yeah, it got so bad that Shia LaBeouf took the live stream to the middle of nowhere with the camera pointing up at a flag that said "He Will Not Divide Us." I think the first thing he did was he put on a roof. No, was it second? I don't know. All I know is there were two instances.
Moved it a couple times,
He moved it more than once.
First, you could only see in the live stream a blue sky and the flag saying "He Will Not Divide Us." They found it.
Mm-hmm.
They heard frogs croaking at night, so they knew it was near still water because frogs don't like running water. And then they looked at the contrails from planes and then looked at they said a place where frogs are, still water, and two planes are intersecting. They found that thing so fast It was amazing. I'm deeply impressed. That's scary.
Again, something that brought us all together. This hilarious game where we have to find Shia LaBeouf's dumb thing.
Do you follow that GeoGuessr guy on YouTube?
Yes.
Who's that?
Yeah,
Oh.
he can look at one picture anywhere in the world and goes through this whole process of analyzing the picture and ends up finding the spot.
Is he the guy who did the album cover of the guy in the alley in
Yes.
Louisville? I watched that.
It's fascinating.
He'll do
first-
like people will be like, oh, my parents took this picture somewhere. I don't know where it is. And he'll be like, bam, here you go.
Yeah.
Like, incredible.
The funny thing was, like, I watched this video and he goes, "Here's I forgot the guy's guy's name of the album cover, but he's like, he's like the singer's from Louisville, so it's probably in Louisville." So, and I was like, "Oh, well, that was dumb." He figured it out because the guy was from there, and then he finds the address, he finds the Google Maps, and he zooms in and he finds where it is on Google Earth. And I'm just like, "Oh, wow, that was amazing."
He's legit.
There's another guy who just had a viral seven-part arc trying to find this skateboarder. I wonder if I can actually look him up on Instagram because I've been watching these videos. They're really, really amazing. Let me pull this one up. He did this collaboration with Tony Hawk. Let me see what the guy's name is if it pops up. Here we go. We got it. So this is Danocracy on Instagram. And what he does is he tracks down people found in old vintage photographs. And it's wild to watch this stuff.
Cool.
So he did 7 episodes trying to find this mystery skateboarder from an old Life magazine photo shoot in Central Park. Couldn't find him. He found everyone else, though. It's really wild. Like, there's women, there's kids. He found these people. It's really amazing.
What if the skateboarder went missing and is a missing person, and that's how we solve a true crime?
Sure.
I like it.
So this is back in 1965, and it's a guy wearing a suit riding like one of the first prototype skateboards. And they're trying to figure out who this guy is because none of it makes sense. Like, he's so comfortable on a board, hands are in his pocket, skateboards were a new thing. How's he riding so well? And he's wearing a suit. Couldn't find him. But point is, someone will send him a photo and be like, I found this photo at a thrift store. And then he was like, I'm going to find out who this person is. And so then he checks the time, the date, the location. He looks at other people who are there, the clothing they're wearing, so he can figure out like the time and all that stuff. It's really cool
sweet.
stuff. Yeah. I need to watch more of his videos because they're fun.
Look, the internet can be a very cool thing,
Right?
but other times it's
Other times it leads to this.
Yeah.
Did you know that running joke of people coming up to Tony Hawk and be like, has anybody ever told you look like Tony Hawk?
Yeah, because he always tweets
it
it.
happens all the time. It's hilarious.
And it's because he's famous, but he's not famous. Like, he's a weird kind of famous.
Yeah.
So he always has these tweets where I was on a plane and someone said, you look like that skateboarder guy, Tony Hawk or whatever. And he's like, oh, really?
I like the one with, I think it was a TSA agent, like checking his ticket. And she was like, Tony Hawk, like the skateboarder?
Oh, Anthony Hawk.
And he was like, yeah. And she was like, I wonder what he's up to. And he was like, this is, what?
This is me. But it's funny because he's basically saying, like, it's a weird thing to be famous for. So people heard the name, but they don't know what he looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as for this this portal, you know the first thing I think of when I see stuff like this, I think, now I get Bill Gates.
I don't think it goes that far for me, but it
isn't. I didn't say I agree with him.
It shows that people are inherently optimistic.
yeah.
Because whenever you propose these kind of things, the first thing I think of is like all of the ways that you can just like make it a bad idea.
But someone was like, no, it'll be nice. You can see the signs they have printed, like, we love Dublin.
I saw some dude's holding up his phone. He's got porn playing on it. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
Did you guys see the climate scientist who said the only way to stop the emissions is through a pandemic that culls most of humans or something like that?
Yeah,
and
don't
then
let that man anywhere near power.
Thanos.
But I mean, these are people saying to cull 5 billion to save 500 million. At least Thanos was like 50-50.
Yeah.
Like, geez, utilitarianism gone. That's the crazy thing about it. It's like we must kill 99% of people to save 1%, and that's how far it goes.
I think that idea is one of the most dangerous ideas going around now.
So
that people are bad.
And I'll tell you why it's fake. I can debunk the whole narrative right now with one simple logical point. The first question is, why avert climate crisis? Any answers?
Why avert the crisis?
Yeah, why is the climate crisis a bad thing?
Well, this is the irony in it, because it affects our population and it affects the world and our ability to thrive here, and it
Because
affects
people
the
will die?
ecosystem. People are going to die. It's going to make it more expensive
Okay.
with food shortages, which is inherently a love and care for humanity and wanting to protect our home.
This is the illogic
Yep.
of the culling humans statement that he made. If the fear of climate change is that it will kill humans, killing humans just makes it a moot point.
Exactly.
So there's no reason to do it. If your concern is there are too many humans and the earth needs to heal, you need only wait, right? Wait for climate change to cull the humans like you've prescribed,
Unless you
and then earth
want
heals.
say on which humans are getting taken
Exactly.
out.
The issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution. It is
Yeah.
like, and they call it like it's green on the outside, red on the inside, or whatever. Like the green environmentalism is the front, but inside it's actually just the front for communism. That some type of socialism, eco-socialism, it's always an excuse to just acquire power and to be able to tell people how they have to live their lives and what they should do, and et cetera, et cetera.
And they always choose the most sad, depressing spokespeople. Like, these people are always, they're not healthy. They look morbid. They're not enjoying life. Like, you see them channeling their inner just frustration at the world. It's not about any grander vision of what the world should be. They're just angry and depressed and frustrated at the world. And they're lashing out against their conservative dad. Like, most of this is just that. But on top of that, you know, the United States, it was just revealed last week that we have the lowest population growth in over 100 years. It's like, that's a major problem. So if you have this whole culture wailing this message of the growth of families is a problem because it's going to strip your economic opportunities, it's bad for the climate, etc., like, that's the death of a nation. You just signed the death wish.
So we'll just do it. We'll get into this a little bit just for a couple minutes. Social Security funds are set to fall short by 2033. NPR reporting this 2 days ago. I got bad news for y'all. In 9 years, there will not be enough money in Social Security to pay the people who rely on it. At some point, it won't matter how much you tax people. Older people are going to get cut off from benefits. They're going to have no way to fund shelters, nursing homes, and the elderly. The issue really comes down to this. Right now, we could raise taxes. It's like, okay, we need more money for Social Security. We got to raise taxes on everybody. And that strains the younger generation. Eventually, there's no one to tax.
Yep.
The birth rate, fertility rate is so low, eventually to the point where there's 3 elderly for every 1 young person. And that 1 young person cannot sustain 3 elderly people.
Nope.
And that's when it all breaks down. Older people are going to keep voting for
That's
their
just one of the
interests.
ways it can break down.
It is one of the ways. Here's what I think. I think Social Security is insane in the first place.
Of course.
Like, the problem, this welfare system opens the door to families not being there for their elderly. The elderly should be cared for by their families. It should be a personal thing. But now Social Security has become a dependency because we created it, and now too many people rely on it. And now it's going to break. You've broken the culture of people taking care of family. You've created a dependency on government, and now government is failing. What I see is older people who are on their own vote way more than younger people. So they will vote for whatever they have to vote for to get money. And eventually that will lead to a very weird system where I wouldn't be surprised if Social Security failing, older people vote on something as insane as younger people have to give up 100% of their income and live off, young people should live off the welfare and should get government housing and do labor and have no disposable income. And then once they're old enough, they'll earn it. That way we can have our money in our golden years. I'm not saying every older person's like that. I'm saying that it's just a pressure system. Enough older people will be staring down the barrel of your benefits will expire next week. And they're going to say, what can I vote for? Well, there's a new system, a new vote that would be in favor of drafting young people into civil service so that we can keep funding the system. They'll say, I'm for it. And young people are going to be like, I don't vote. And there you go. New system you get.
Yeah, I mean, what happens in 2033 when the people that have paid into this their entire lives are forced to reckon with the fact that it's all a scam? Do they feel frustration at the folks that have pushed them into the scam for decades? Do they wallow in apathy? Is this the beginning of a universal basic income and we start with the elderly?
Yep.
In South Korea, they've dealt with a...
But where does the labor come from?
Exactly. There's nobody to supply any of the care or the services, or certainly the income from a taxation perspective to fund all of that.
But the income is immaterial at a certain point. You can print all the money in the world. You can tax everything you want. But if the labor doesn't exist, you're buying nothing with your money.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So
I mean, that's why population collapse is so dangerous.
Exactly. If we get to the point where they say, okay, fine, universal basic income, the old person's going to walk to the supermarket and there's going to be no one working there. They're going to be like, where's the staff? And they're going to be like, there are none. We have one employee. He's off today. And they're going to be like, where is everybody? There are no young people. There's no young people. The government can print you $1 million. You can't spend it.
We at Public Square own the fastest growing baby brand in the world. It's called Every Life. And we launched a campaign in January called Make More Babies. And we put a big Times Square billboard up.
I remember that.
And said, make more babies. And we had a wonderful team of influencers that were there. And Ashley St. Clair was actually on the ground interviewing people and asking them, do you believe in this statement? Do you believe that we should make more babies? Do you believe that it's good for the world? And some people gave an emphatic yes, absolutely. Like, it's natural to reproduce and it's beautiful to populate the world and we should create a legacy. A shocking amount of people, though, gave completely ridiculous, reckless answers of like, oh, no, bad for the climate. Oh, no, too expensive. Oh, no. And it's like, how short-sighted and how, by the way, narcissistic do you have to be to believe that, like, no, my comforts are too... Like, we used to be, as you described earlier in the show, we used to be a nation where the American dream, or maybe this was before we were recording, but it was brilliant. You said the American dream used to be that a family would come here and they would be willing to live in a tiny studio. They would work all their lives so that their kids one day could own the house in the suburbs.
Yep.
Today, when you interview somebody and you ask them, oh, you know, do you think make more babies is a good thing for the world? And they answer, no, definitely not in this economy. It's like you've completely lost sight of your mandate as a human, which is like to make your community a better place. And one of the ways that you do that for the vast majority of people is have kids, be fruitful, multiply.
When I worked at O'Hare Airport, there were a lot of Filipino guys that would work 80 hours a week. There was one guy who tried working a double shift every single day, and they put him on mandatory vacation because of legal limits. So he was trying to work no days off every day, double shifts.
Dude.
And, well, one of the issues is that you start generating overtime after you work a certain amount of hours. So the way the union organized it was that it was actually really cool. You could trade shifts with anyone by logging the computer. They didn't care who was there as long as you were there. So what I ended up doing was I had Monday through Friday off, and I would work Saturday and Sunday from 5:30 till midnight. I would sleep at the airport, work 5:30 in the morning, work all the way till night, and then Monday through Friday, I had every day off, and I was getting 36 hours, and you'd get mandatory overtime typically on Saturday nights. If you work the night shift, you almost always they call it Mando, because if a plane comes late and you're on the morning shift, you leave. Guys who are coming in will take care of it. If you're on the night shift, you're the last shift, the plane comes in, you have to stay, and you get time and a half. There was one guy who refused to take any time off, and it was because he moved here from the Philippines. He was in his 60s. He had older teenage kids, and he wanted them to go to college. And they said that's the American dream. The American dream is that when they were in the Philippines, they were dreaming of coming to America and working for $10 an hour. The American dream was that they could come and they could work every waking moment of their lives, but for $10 an hour. And their kids would get to go to school and get a job and one day own a house. Now you ask young people, what's the American dream? And they say to make it big on TikTok and then be rich and get to go and party. And it's like, wow, that was never the American dream.
I think younger
Ownership of
generations...
property was the thing that people wanted. Like, it used to be where the American dream was to be able to have a house and a family, and the property was a big part of it, because in other countries, property rights weren't as secure as they are in the U.S. And the security of the property rights in the United States is the driver of our economy. It's what makes your entire society capable of producing the products and services that you need, so property rights are fundamental, and that is really what the American dream is about: is owning your own little bit of free country where you can be left alone.
So
We're going to go to Super Chat. So if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, and head over to timcast.com. Click join us. Become a member because the uncensored member call-in show will be coming up in about 23 minutes. And we're looking forward to hearing from all you guys. If you want to be one of the callers, you got to become a member. And your membership actually sustains the show. So we're live from 8 to 11 every night because we do that extra hour. So if you're missing that hour, you're missing out. Plus, as a member, you're in the Discord server hanging out with like-minded individuals. There's a ton of extra content that they're all producing and cool people you can meet and hang out with, and I recommend it. We're really excited for when we get the Cast Brew physical location up so we can have the physical space to hang out at and play skee ball. Legit, we're going to get a skee ball machine.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah. All right, Clint Torres, of course.
Yes.
With the first Super Chat saying, howdy, people.
Go to the gym.
Happy Taco Tuesday. I had fajita and egg for breakfast and lady for dinner. What kind did y'all have? I had pollo asado with corn tortillas, and it was delicious. Nice. So it was in fact Taco Tuesday. I didn't think about it, but I enjoyed it.
I had a taco last night. Does that count? It was Tuesday somewhere.
That's
probably,
right.
If you go around the world. I had a burrito taco. It was wonderful.
Oh yeah,
Those are amazing.
Great. All right. Let's go. Mike E says, anyone else here to see what hairstyle Serge has? I mean, it doesn't change, does it?
It's rad.
No.
Right now, Serge is rocking sort of a loose curl, sort of free-flowing effect. He's not scrunching his curls to give it that real ringlet look. He's more relaxed. It's almost an ode to the 70s in some ways, I would say.
All right. Tyler for Page says, just wanted to say thank you for donating to my GoFundMe last night. Was able to get another month worth of medication and gas for dialysis.
That rules.
Best of luck, man.
Well,
Quantum Strange Quark says, howdy up there, Clint. Everybody knows Clint's going to be the first Super Chat. Let's go. Big 7588 says, free Tibet. The Republic of China is the lawful government. The CCP are an illegal occupying force. Does that mean that Taiwan has the right to intifada China?
You mean West Taiwan?
West Taiwan.
I think so.
West Taiwan.
I think so.
Let's go. I'm Not Your Buddy guy says, Kingsman's Secret Service was meant to be an entertaining spy thriller, not a roadmap to solving climate change. Isn't that weird that you've got movies like this? Okay, you've got the show Utopia. Have you seen that one?
mm-mm. But everybody talks about this in relation to this conversation.
Right. And then you have Kingsman, which they're both about tech billionaire megalomaniacs who want a coal population. Kingsman I remember watching that being like kind of wild premise, but I think I know where that idea comes from. Good movie, by the way.
Yep.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. Second one was okay. I think I watched the third one and I wasn't as into it.
Haven't seen the third.
I like all of them, but the first one was really good. Let's go. What do we got here? All right. BBS fan says, stop threatening to send people here to Alaska. By the way, shipping to Alaska makes your coffee too much money. Saving up $35,000 for a septic is more important. Well, fair point. Shipping is brutal.
That's a heck of a septic system.
Yeah, 35 grand.
Yeah. IMBP says, PBD hosting Dave Smith versus Chris Cuomo on May 31st. It's going to be glorious. It is indeed. I don't know what Chris Cuomo was thinking. Dave Smith is like
an assassin.
I mean, of all the people to sit down with, he said, Dave Smith, that makes sense. I'm like,
but he probably didn't get a say, right? Like if he's a contracted employee of whatever PBD's company is, like he has to make an appearance.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe I could be wrong. I don't know what his contract looks like, but it's Dave Smith or the alternate that gets the option to say, no, it doesn't seem like Chris Cuomo could have.
I suppose that's the benefit to hiring people like Chris Cuomo. I was thinking, I'm like
the whipping boy.
Yeah, you just make him look like a fool all the time.
Well, it's not just that. It's like we try to book people all the time that should be challenged. They won't do it. They don't want to be challenged.
Yeah. So you just put him on payroll so he has to be.
Yeah, so maybe that's the real play that PBD's making, and he can't say it. He's like, look, we put this guy in payroll, and then we get to put him on camera every time and have that debate.
I mean, wasn't Tucker employed by CNN at one point? Like
Yes.
this
Yeah.
happens. There are all kinds of concerns to get hired by the other side. I don't think that other people do it for Fox News, but
yeah, but to be fair, CNN was very different back then.
Yeah, Crossfire days.
Yep. Yeah, and then Tucker was also on MSNBC.
Mm-hmm.
MSNBC was like, what is it, moderate corporate? Now it's far left.
Right after 9/11, I listened to a ton of MSNBC, and I watched MSNBC every day from like 9/11 until like 2010 when it just got to the point where I couldn't watch it anymore because they started actually. The thing that set it off for me was I was just like, all right, Morning Joe's starting to make comments about assault weapons bans and stuff like that. I'm like, you're supposed to be a Republican. I'm like, I can't watch this anymore. But that's the thing. It's like it happened all the time. Like you see all these left-leaning or these mainstream middle-of-the-road places going to the left.
All right, let's go. Project Editon says, I'm in Baltimore County, Maryland. Went to vote. They gave me the wrong ballot twice. Both were Democrat. Went back for a third time. They had to go to the end of the table, move a bunch of crap off the unopened Republican ballots. Wow. Crazy. Well, we don't trust Maryland, so what are you going to get into?
Is that unopened because it's Baltimore County and therefore there are just not that many Republicans? Or is he saying that they're trying to get him to vote as a Democrat?
Trying to get him to vote as a Democrat, I'd imagine. Let's go. Domagod says, what is it with Dems and brains? Reza ate them. RFK Jr. had his eaten. Biden doesn't have one. And the woke have a mind virus. That is quite humorous.
It is also funny that John Fetterman broke his brain or through his throat and then kind of woke up. Like, you know, he had a TBI or a stroke, technically, I guess. And in that stroke, he kind of came to his senses and it cured his mental illness. And now he's thinking rationally amongst the Democrats on some things, which is wild to see.
KS Corey says, I just looked at the list of 100. My local Red Lobster closed yesterday, but wasn't on the list. Probably a lot more closing than they want to admit.
Yeah.
Or they announce, like, here's the ones we've closed, while others are in the process of closing.
Right, and they're also saying, like, we're starting the auctions of the equipment at these 50 places, but that doesn't mean it's exclusive to these 50 places. It's just where the start is.
I'd imagine, given that they're filing for bankruptcy protection, this is probably very similar to the Bed Bath & Beyond story, where they sort of announce that they're going bankrupt, and then it's a 3 to 4 year journey as they roll off stores and try to protect any existing cash flow.
Are you saying people are going to be able to buy the Red Lobster
Get your
decor
cheddar
at one
biscuits
point?
while you can.
No, you could buy like the shelves from the clothing Bed Bath & Beyond. Like people
Oh,
could
yeah.
buy the Red Lobster sign in a couple of years.
The little fish tanks where they put the lobsters. Get them while they're hot.
Those are expensive. Those
Yeah,
are
sure
really
they
expensive.
are.
Maybe get a good deal.
So when Sears, like Sears has been shutting, Sears gone, right?
Yeah, I don't think there's another Sears that exists anymore.
I don't know.
I remember going to Sears. This was in Deptford, New Jersey, I think is where it was. And everything was for sale. Just literally the shelves, the hooks that go into the shelves, all for sale. The chairs, computers. I was like, I'd love to buy one of these point of sales terminals. You know what I mean? But everything, it was crazy because there's like a weird shelf and it was like sold. Like someone came in and said, I want this display rack. And they're like, all of it has got to go. And then I think what did they turn it into? I can't remember.
There are only 11 left.
11 Sears.
10 in continental U.S. and 1 in Puerto Rico.
This is the crazy thing. Why didn't they become Amazon? They had distribution centers already.
Yep. They could have, but they didn't see the writing on the wall. It's sort of the BlackBerry versus iPhone story, which is a great movie, by the way, if you haven't seen it. But about the BlackBerry story. But, you know, BlackBerry had the opportunity to be the iPhone, but they were so tied to the clicking and they thought consumers would never love a touchscreen. Steve Jobs was crazy enough to believe that they would, and he went after it. But I can't remember the founder of BlackBerry. He had been debating for years trying to develop a touchscreen and just wouldn't do it, wouldn't go the smartphone route. And then Apple comes onto the scene and blows up. Amazon had plenty of those storefronts that could have gone into the digital age. It's the same story with Blockbuster versus Netflix.
Yep.
Like people thought Netflix was a joke and Blockbuster's the future. Blockbuster stuck to their guns and Netflix saw a future and went after it.
But here's the other thing to consider. The people who are behind these things, the brand may be dead, but the people behind them don't go anywhere. So we're all saying like, wow, how did Sears go out of business? I'd imagine that a lot of people retired, very wealthy, who were running this corporation, and they didn't care. Younger guys who were heavily invested moved their money over to Amazon in shares and didn't think twice. And then when Sears started going under, they said, liquidate it, pull out the cash we can. We're in Amazon now.
Yep.
So these individuals who are at the highest level, they don't go anywhere.
Well,
Just the
not only
brands.
that, most of the time when a company's going through a bankruptcy proceeding like this, they'll hire a CEO that's experienced in bankruptcies, that's basically cleaning up all the assets to get ready for a sale. And so you're right. All of the existing people, the minute that there's blood in the water, they've detached themselves from it. They have no brand loyalty to it anymore. And they bring in a team that is there to basically salvage any assets that are remaining. But it's interesting, the world. I was driving by a mall recently. I can't remember where I was. Indiana. I was driving by a mall, and half of the mall stores were completely shuttered.
Yeah,
there was no more. Everything was for lease. Nothing was actually occupied, other than a few small stores. And I do think that there is a massive awakening coming in the world of sort of commercial real estate for a lot of these things. Like, it'll be fascinating to see what comes of the old Sears buildings as they continue to advance forward. Does anybody even need that space anymore? A lot of them are turning into churches or health centers or these different things. But yeah, I think a lot of
there are cities where unoccupied office buildings, because of the big conversion to remote work, they're now saying like, well, do we turn these? I think it was Boston was like, should we turn these into apartments? What should we do with them? You know, anecdotally with the mall, I always find it interesting because there was, when I lived in Dallas, there was one mall that was like, I guess had been really great back in the day, but the movie theater was still there and it was really inexpensive to go. But also the storefronts, it would be like, this is my personal art gallery for the art that I make. Like it was getting some sort of like weird, or like there's a mall nearby that like a church has a storefront in. And I just find this deeply fascinating because at a certain point, the mall needs someone to be there. At what point does it become sort of a more urban cities, small town, like Main Street Square, because they're all right there? Is it a salvageable thing, or do they have to say like, this is something we shut down? There was a mall in, I'm trying to think what it is. Somewhere in Rhode Island, there was a big sort of mall type area, but it was a historic structure. And they turned the upper level of it into basically tiny home sized apartments, you know? So it'd be like really small, like basically efficiency studio apartments. And then they kept the lower level as like this area. And it meant that they had residents there who would then go to the coffee shops or stuff that were in the area. There is a potential to change these things. On the other hand, will we return to the iconic mall era? Probably not.
Well, would you go back to the 90s if you had a time machine?
Oh yeah, malls scream nostalgia. I used to skateboard on the top of a mall in high school on the roof, and you'd get in trouble, but it was awesome. And you'd hang out in the food court for hours, and it screams classic Americana. I absolutely would.
I feel bad for young people. You know, it's funny because I always remember like older generation being like, we had 8 tracks, you know, and you'd put it in and you'd play the song. It's like, wow, and we had cassettes, and now it's like. Now there's a floppy disk icon in programs that young people, like these Gen Z kids, are like, what is that? But outside of all of that technology changes stuff that happens to a lot of people, up until the internet, every generation had the hanging out at the mall and goofing off and being chased by security guards. And there's movies where it's like, you're a kid in the 90s and you're watching a movie where a dude's skating in the 80s running from a security guard. And I'm like, oh, been there. That's so funny that it's like the people who are in that movie are basically our parents today. We have a shared experience of what it's like to hang out with our friends at the park, and now that's just not the case. Well, a little bit, but it's not the same.
Think about that scene in Mean Girls where they're at the school. They're like, we're going to the mall, and they bring her, and then she describes it as if it's sort of like observing the wildlife of teenagers, and these people are over there, and these people are doing whatever. Like that aspect of socialization went away for huge generations of young people. And then we wonder why they socialize differently, why they're more anxious. Like they aren't doing the things that generations did before them. And so they effectively view the world in a very different and ultimately antisocial way.
I think what I'll do is I'm going to invest all of the money we make into building a device that traps all of humanity in the years of the early 80s when Men at Work were at the top of the charts. Because that was the only time that mattered. Because Overkill is like one of the best songs ever, and we can sit there and listen to it all day, every day. And of course, Land Down Under, talk about one of the best songs ever written.
It's the way we salvage humanity.
That's right. Let's read some more super chats. Just Because I'm Free says, I think the Federal Reserve will wait to spike the economy till Trump gets elected, unless he plays ball with the deep state. Is blackmail the correct term? I won't be surprised. The Fed can deeply control, but I don't know. If you look at their balance sheet and you look at the inflation and stuff, I don't know that the Federal Reserve can actually navigate their way out of this one.
No.
And I don't think that I think if you think that the Federal Reserve would like harpoon Trump's presidency because it's Trump, I don't think you understand the gravity of the situation. Mm-hmm. Like when everything falls apart, to call it falling apart is insufficient. Like I said, I don't think that the United States loses the dollar and has an economic restructuring without like a world war or without significant wars happening in other parts of the world. Because the United States, whether or not people like it or think it's good or not, the United States is essentially the global police force, the way that it essentially works right now. And if there's a significant change to the status quo in the United States, you're going to have serious repercussions throughout the whole world.
I got to read this one. James Eaton says, Tim, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I can't watch right now. I'm in the hospital with my dad, but I just want to thank you. Your explanation on what to do for a sucking chest wound might have saved his life. I hope it did save his life. I imagine he got some kind of lung punctured. But I will just point this out again. And the reason why I've brought up the idea of how to treat a sucking chest wound, you guys are familiar with what this is because when I was a teenager, or this is probably, I think I was probably like early 20s, there was a story in my neighborhood of a dude who got into a fight and he got stabbed in the chest and got up and ran off. And then a minute and a half later, collapsed dead. And it's crazy to think that strike to the chest, if only he knew to man, hold a credit card over it, even something, he'd be alive. And so this is one of the things they teach you in hostile environment courses, first aid courses. There's a bunch of complicated ways to do it. Some say if you have no choice, you hold a credit card over it to seal the wound. But if you get, and definitely consult a medical professional, because I'm going to give you the rudimentary, I did first aid hostile environment training. You take, if you have plastic wrap, you put it over the wound and you tape down 3 sides. And what that does is when there's a hole in the where the lung is, when the person tries to inhale, there's no pressure differential, so no air actually moves. The chest cavity expands and the air that's in there stays in there. So the person's asphyxiating while thinking they're breathing and then they just die. But if you seal the hole, when they're breathing, then it pulls air in, pushes air out, pulls air in, that's how it works. And what happens when you put the plastic over it, tape it down to 3 sides, is that when they inhale, it pulls the plastic wrap to their chest. And when they when they inhale, the expanding pressure forces air out of the hole because it can't pull air in, which pushes the pressure back out, allowing them to breathe better. It was just a crazy idea because there are these moments where if you just knew the tiniest bit of it, if someone said one sentence to you, someone could be alive. That's the craziest thing.
You can buy stuff like this, like hyphen vents. These are actual chest seals. You can buy stuff like this on Amazon. You can buy tourniquets on Amazon.
Or Public Square. We got it all too.
Or Public Square. There you go.
Just saying.
You can get all kinds of first aid stuff that is not expensive. It's not going to end up, crushing your bank account or whatever. And it
could make a huge difference.
Yeah, you can save lives. And a lot of people talk about guns and stuff like that and carrying guns and stuff. Look, you're way more likely to find a use for a tourniquet or bandage, pressure bandages. Those are great. Pressure bandages are great. Or gauze than you are for a gun. So get first aid training and get a bunch of first aid stuff and stuff it into your car and into a bag.
This one blew my mind. When I did hostile environment training and they're teaching the basis of tourniquets, they were giving instruction on femoral bleed tourniquet, and people put it close to the knee. They put it, I don't know how to describe it, above or below, but they were like, you have to put the tourniquet above the wound so that the blood doesn't pour out of the body. And they went, oh. And I was like, I can't believe there were people that did not realize that the purpose of the tourniquet is to cut off the blood flow to pouring out of the bleed. Crazy thing, as an aside, is he showed a pig femoral bleed and a guy passed out instantly. There's that, I don't know what it's called, but it triggers some nerve when you see the blood flow and some people faint. And he puts on the screen the pig bleeding and a guy just hits the ground. We hear a bang, the chairs flip over. They were folding chairs. And then the instructor immediately runs over, grabs his legs and lifts his legs up, which increases the blood pressure to the brain. The guy comes to and tries getting up, and the instructor yells, "Do not move!" And the guy just freezes. And the guy on the ground goes, I'm fine, I'm fine. He goes, "No, you're not. You passed out, and the only reason you're conscious is I'm holding your legs up. Stay where you are." It was wild. Crazy story. Let's read some more super chats. Colby Hansen says, Michael, I love the vision, but what are you doing to extend to the West Coast? Here in Utah, representation is a bit lackluster aside from businesses that are on our side.
Great question. First of all, thank you. What I would say is that Utah is actually one of our fastest growing states, which is pretty exciting. We have obviously 2 components of the platform. So we have the e-commerce side where you can actually shop from all the different businesses, tens of thousands that are selling their products directly online so that you can get these products shipped towards your door. If you're looking for gauze, if you're looking for tourniquets, if you're looking for coffee, Cast Brew, shout out. Or you're looking for flip skateboards, which I didn't even know was on our platform until earlier today, which is awesome.
Winning.
Still stoked on that. e-commerce is great for that. On the local side, my recommendation is keep checking back in every few weeks because you'll be amazed at how quickly that local community on the Near Me tab actually blossoms. But on top of that, if you know a business that you feel like is probably with us, invite them to the platform because you'll be amazed that not only will that business join, we've seen in the data that they'll likely invite 3 other businesses to join with them. One of the greatest ways that we've actually grown in local communities with our Near Me functionality is when businesses that are already on actually invite other businesses. They're creating this sort of chamber of commerce. And that's one of the most exciting aspects of this platform. So
we were joking about this because I was saying I want to get my hair cut, and the only one in the area is actually like an hour and a half away in DC. And I was like, but I just keep checking. There'll be another salon on there eventually.
Oh, yeah, there will.
All right.
Even in West Virginia. Come on.
Bill Levin says, Tim, you had a hand in saving my life. That's 2 in one night. Wow. I live in Vegas, was a federal contractor, drank heavily and hated life. You said over and over, get out of these cities and move to red states. I listened. I got early retirement. My wife works remote, and we're happy in Texas since October. I'm glad to. It's a different kind of saving life. But, you know, there's a lot of people I know that the reason why I was saying earlier in the show about having purpose, seeing the news and having it light a fire within you to be the warrior is that there's a lot of people who are lost without purpose. There's a lot of people wondering why they're here and asking these questions. A lot of young people who are depressed and angry. And some of these kids are going towards the woke cult because it provides a pseudo purpose. Be one of us, join the mission. And it's giving, no. Idle hands, the devil's playground. We need to make a more divine playground. We need to put into the hands of young people divine purpose. That is to create life, to protect life, to make the world better, to bring a wholesome dignity to our society, to protect and help it flourish. We've got this tremendous force in wokeness that is a chaotic, destructive force that is amoral. It is without morals, and it seeks to pull people who are missing their purpose and their mission into darkness. We don't have, I don't believe, a very strong counter movement. We have people who believe in freedom. We have people who are like, those people are crazy. But we don't have a comparable force of, what's the right word, generacy? You've got degeneracy, but where's the inversion of people being like, let's make a world better? That being said, they do exist. I think what Daily Wire's doing with BANKRUPTCY and this children program is absolutely amazing. Public Square, obviously, that's why we love what you guys do.
Thank you.
And it exists. And I actually think, to put it simply, Public Square, I think the reason you guys are so important is that might be the public square of this.
It's our goal.
You know, it's the inversion of woke.
Well, and we always want to be known more for what we're for and the vision we're casting for the future rather than what we're against. So we get asked all the time, can you guys make a blacklist of all the businesses we should stay away from? It's like, you know that already. You see it in culture. It's a safe assumption that most of the businesses you shop from, if you're just kind of taking the corporate hand, are probably businesses that are working against you. We'd rather spend all of our time, energy, and efforts into showcasing the type of American entrepreneurs you should support. I'd rather focus all of my energy on casting a vision for the future we're trying to create. Because I completely agree, Tim. It is our pure intent at the end of the day to create a new public square.
All right,
That's
last one. Drew Dane says, is Public Square open to individuals? I build custom PCs, can't plug my site in a super chat, but I'm sweet information technology on Zuckerbook.
Absolutely. You would not be the only one, so come join. We do really well with sole proprietors, the creator economy. We're a massive fan. And ultimately, you'll find that obviously not only is it a great values-aligned community, but even differentiated from an Amazon, we have a product in terms of how our platform is actually structured that far better serves the small businesses or sole proprietorships, individual content creators, etc.
The last thing I want to say is just one more thing about Flip Skateboards being on Public Square. This is one of the biggest skate companies in the world with some of the most prominent skateboarders. These are guys who appeared in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater back in the day. The first skateboard I ever owned was a Tom Penny Flip skateboard. And AWH Skateboard Distribution, one of the biggest in the country, as well as Flip Skateboards, being on Public Square. This is Olympic-level professional equipment asserting publicly that they oppose the woke cult garbage, selling a product to where they think it matters, and it's absolutely incredible. So we're going to go to the members-only show. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Don't forget, 1 like equals 1 Let's Go, Brandon. That apparently works better than saying smash the like button. And head over to timcast.com. Click Join Us if you want to listen to the uncensored members call-in show where we answer questions from you guys. And you can really ask whatever you want. It's up to the members to vote on what they want to appear on the show. And it'll be a lot of fun. So we'll see you there. Make sure you join the Discord server. It's how you get involved. Follow me at Timcast on Twitter or X and Instagram. And don't forget rumble.com/Timcast IRL as well. But subscribe to this channel and share the show with your friends. Michael, do you want to shout anything out?
Just that it's awesome to be here. You can check out Public Square at publicsquare.com. If you'd like to check out, if you're a parent, you'd like to check out the baby brand that I referenced earlier, that's everylife.com. And then we own a few other really cool businesses in the parallel economy. We'd encourage you to join us on our journey. You can change the country with the power of your wallet. So please, please, please do not be apathetic. Put your hope for a better future into your purchasing power and change the country with the power of your commerce.
And think about how cool this is. You're looking for a bite to eat. You open the Public Square app. You look at the map. You see a burger joint, you walk in, the owner's behind the counter making burgers, and you can be like, I saw you guys in Public Square, and he's gonna be like, awesome. And that means you can talk freely about all of the things you want to talk about because you know this person's not gonna be a nut job.
You got it. It's that simple.
Perfect. I am Phil That Remains on Twix. I am Phil That Remains Official on Instagram. The band is All That Remains. You can catch us this summer on the Destroy All Enemies tour with Megadeth and Mudvayne. You can check out our new single Divine on Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, Amazon Music, Doozer, I think it's called. You know, the internet. Oh, and don't forget, The Left Lane is for Crime.
Well, it's been so fun to have you here, Michael. I always like when you're on the show. I'm Hannah Claire Brimla. I'm a writer for SCNR.com. That's Scanner News. You can check out all of our work at Timcast News on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to follow me personally, I'm on Instagram at hannahclaire.b and I'm on Twitter at hannahclaireb. Guys, thank you so much. Bye, Serge.
See you later, Hannah Claire. Shout out to the federal agents who monitor us. What's up, guys?
Hey.
See you later.
They're just down the street. All right, everybody. We'll see you all over at timcast.com in about a minute. Thanks for hanging out.